Hey guys, welcome to the Comic Den. I'm your host, Ace Knuckles, and joining me for the third time is David. Thank you for joining me.
You bet.
You guys can find me at The Comic Den on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, and they will never find David.
That's right, flying low under the radar.
Remember, folks, I am not a comic expert or historian, nor am I a Star Wars aficionado. I'm just a guy who manipulated this guy's job opportunities so that he could continue doing a podcast. Speaking of, we almost didn't get to do this.
That's right.
So I gave you both of these just because I didn't want you to forever think that you would never get to finish the story. Right. But then some stuff turned out.
Job opportunity fell through, and so
yeah, which
still here.
Yeah, happy story, sad story.
Happy story for you.
Well, I mean, I want what's best for you, but I'm also very selfish.
Well, thanks for being honest. No
Yeah.
problem.
How has your summer been going so far?
It was great. I just got back from kind of a family vacation in Texas. We went to South Padre, so
Okay.
it was really nice. It's really humid down there.
Yeah.
It's right on the coast. Well, it is on the coast, but it's on the border there, Brownsville and Mexican border.
Right.
And it's super warm. Got a nice breeze all the time. So it's warm, but you sit on the beach. It's
Right.
comfortable.
You missed all the rain here, so.
Yeah, well, I got the first half of the rain, and then we got, I guess, 4.5 more inches or something while I was gone.
Yeah, it was bad. Did you guys drive or fly or what?
Oh, we drove down, so it's like a
Okay.
14-hour drive. So
Yeah, I've been trying to find things to do. My wife is up in Alaska right now, and she's there until next Wednesday.
Oh.
So it's like, all right, and I had it all planned out. I was supposed to be camping right now, but the lake we were going to, my friend showed me a picture,
yeah,
and they have those restrooms
Yep.
like sitting out everywhere. All you could see was the roof of the
what
bathroom.
lake were you gonna go to?
I was somewhere up in Salina.
Okay.
And then Friday, as long as the weather holds out, or tomorrow, I guess,
It's
we're
tomorrow,
going
yeah.
up to the races.
Okay.
So they've got some NHRA drag races going on. But
In
if
Salina.
but if it rains,
No races.
can't really do anything. So
I know, it's been so bizarre. It's just rain, and
yeah,
yeah.
it is so weird because it hasn't rained this much in forever.
Yeah. Well, I'm afraid we're getting all our rain that we're going to need for the rest of the summer right now, and then it's going to be bone dry in
Yeah.
July and August.
Well, and the mosquitoes are already terrible.
Oh, yeah.
They're so bad.
Because, well, before we went down, I didn't see hardly any bugs, and then, we got home this week, and I was, like, sitting out on the porch, and it was like,
Yeah.
mosquitoes everywhere, and I was like, what happened?
Yeah, you gotta invest in some off.
Yeah, exactly.
Umbrellas and off. Have you gone and seen any movies yet? It's gonna be a big summer for movies.
Well, I told you what happened when I still haven't finished the Avengers Endgame. So
Endgame.
for everybody who's watching and listening, we're talking about rain, but it's also severe weather season, and so I finally went and watched Endgame, and I think we were about 2/3 of the way in. They just finished. Spoiler alert! In case everybody else has already seen the movie or hasn't. They just finished all the jumping back in time, collecting all the things, the
Stones
and the extra serums, and then they shut the movie off because there was a tornado warning. I was like, ah! So then we don't live too far from that theater, so we just went home and got in the basement. So I was like, I didn't want to stay at the theater if there really was a tornado.
Right.
Anyway, so we didn't finish the movie there.
Okay. Yeah, I went to 2 movies by myself for the first time ever.
You went solo.
It's a new experience.
Did you tell your wife what you were doing while you were in Alaska?
Yeah.
Or she was in Alaska?
Yeah, I was like, I'm super bored. I'm going to go watch a movie. I had a gift card, so I went and watched the Detective Pikachu movie, which was excellent.
It looked really good.
It is so good. And it's very satisfying for somebody who grew up loving Pokemon and kind of in that realm.
I grew up loving Pokemon.
Yeah, it's definitely like in the vein of Shrek, where... Yeah, all the kids relate to it as well.
Right.
But there's some definite adult humor that'll kind of hit.
Sure.
And it's not, super gross or anything, but Yeah, it's also a pretty good storyline.
Is it taking place in the Pokemon universe? Or is it...
So
I don't know what the premise of it is. I just know it looks funny, the interaction between...
In the trailer, they show that Mewtwo is there.
Okay.
And so it's not a big spoiler if I say that. I won't tell you what Mewtwo's role is in all of it. But they reference... Did you ever watch the Pokemon movie?
I watched the first one with Mewtwo.
Yes.
Okay.
They reference that.
Okay.
So they reference the fact that he was created in a lab.
Right.
Then he destroyed everything and escaped. And they were like mysterious. So they never really said, oh yeah, and then this, and this happened and specifically stated. But he was created in a lab. He did escape. It was very violent.
Right.
And then that's kind of where they go from there. So it seems like they're setting it up.
It's situated in the Pokemon universe in the sense that it's like, is it like Kanto region or is it?
They kind
of blend different.
The city they're in is Rhyme City.
Okay.
And I don't remember.
From any of the games.
I don't remember if it's from any of the games.
I haven't played any of the like latest generations, so probably like 3 or 4 generations.
Yeah. See, and I played the originals.
Okay.
So like red, green, blue, whatever. Then I played silver and gold.
Yep.
Then I think I skipped and I played Ruby and Sapphire.
I played those as well. Yeah.
And right now I'm playing Ultra Sun.
Okay. I have played the original Sun and Moon. I haven't played the next version of it. I mean, it's the same story, but then they add a whole other thing onto it, right?
Yeah, it's just like an extra little tidbit.
Right.
And I don't remember the other games other than the original.
White.
Yeah, XY. I don't remember enough of those games from Silver on to tell you what any of the cities were.
I don't either. I remember the original Kanto region fairly well because I played it.
You had that, and then the Johto region was silver and gold.
Yep.
And then I'd lose it after that.
I loved those 2 generations. I loved those.
Yeah, and then I've been looking for an original Game Boy because mine got stolen.
Like the big, bulky
one? Not the original. Okay, a Game Boy Color.
Okay,
because I don't want the giant
They're
one.
the smaller.
Yeah, it takes 6
size.
AA batteries to run,
like
and all you get is the green screen. Yeah,
the car battery version.
I had a Game Boy Color. I had Pokemon Blue. And then we took our car into the shop to get worked on, and all of a sudden that and my wife's headphones went missing. But we didn't realize it until like 2 weeks later, so there's no way we could go back and say, you guys stole it. Right. But we know. So anyway, I was devastated about that. Right. And so I'm like, well, I'll get a new one. It shouldn't be that much money. Like $80 for a Game Boy Color. And then people are wanting $40 and $50 for the original.
For the blue version cartridges?
Yeah, and I'm like, holy crap. And then they came out with those crappy leaf green and fire red. I hated those. Mostly because they fixed the bug or the cheat or whatever.
Okay.
So there was a cheat in the original games where if you put something in the 7th slot and then you went to the island, from your house.
The items? Is that what it is?
Yeah, it would copy it to 99.
That's right. I remember I'm like, this sounds really familiar.
So you'd get 99 Master Balls and you can go catch all the legendary Pokemon. Yeah. You could do it with rare candies and just
and then
level up everything. But yeah, it's interesting. So there's a lot of nostalgia for that. And even while I'm playing Sun and Moon or Ultra Sun, sometimes I'll turn the volume up, even though there's no words or anything, just so that I can get that like techno music that they have with it.
I love the victory music.
Yeah,
it's like it's just so fun.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I went and I was super excited to see it, and the fact that it met all of my expectations. I mean, I'm sure there are flaws to the movie, but I was too excited about it. And I was like one of 6 people to go see it.
Now, you're one of 6 people in the theater?
Yeah, well, I went to the early movie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It wasn't overwhelmed with kids yet?
No, they were all going to see Aladdin.
Oh, I did actually watch that.
Oh, yeah?
Before I went to Texas. I was pleasantly surprised. I thought, this could be real silly,
Yeah.
Cartoon. I enjoyed the cartoon.
Right.
I'm not a huge musical person to begin with. but I really enjoyed the Aladdin. I just like the character development.
Yeah.
I enjoy it.
Yeah, I've heard mixed reviews, but I think some people are holding it up against the Robin Williams Aladdin.
Well, the fact that they tweaked and changed some things, that's
well, it has to be.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. And I think people just get super upset when they have this nostalgic
whenever
view of
they're
something.
alive.
Yeah, and then they change something.
Yeah. I also went yesterday to see Brightburn.
Okay, I don't know what that is.
So it is a direct copy of the Superman story.
Okay.
Family can't have kids.
Right.
Rural farm out in Kansas, but they're in Brightburn, Kansas instead of Smallville. Spaceship crashes. They hide the spaceship, try to raise the kid. Except once the kid figures out he has powers, he starts killing people.
Oh.
And it's just, it's like horrific, like how some of this stuff goes down. And I was the only one in the theater. Again,
really?
Yeah, it was Wednesday, and it was like 5:00 movies downtown. Mm-hmm. So I was like, well, I'll go see it.
Is that where they give you a cheaper? Is it still a cheaper price?
Yeah, it's on Wednesdays downtown. It's $5.
Okay.
Which is usually packed, but since I went at 3, I guess everybody was still at work.
Right.
So yeah, I was the only one in the theater. And I don't get scared in movies,
Right.
but it was like weird.
Being the only person in a
it's
giant
weird.
room where it's dark.
And it's a horror movie, and so the previews are all horror movies, and so it's like the new Annabelle movie and whatever else is coming out, and I'm like, this is like real creepy.
You're like, I'm gonna come back in a little bit.
Yeah. Well, and the crazy thing is, since I'm the only one in there, I can like have my phone out. Like, who's gonna care?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. But I don't, and that was nice because I don't do well with like, I do all right with gore. Mm-hmm. But if it's graphic gore, I can't handle that.
Yeah.
Like I can handle Saving Private Ryan gore because that's people exploding, gunshots, whatever. Some of the stuff that happens in this movie, I'm like, I'm gonna, look at my phone for a second because I can't watch this.
I don't really like horror movies very much to begin with, so
yeah,
I probably won't see that movie.
Yeah, it was really good, and at the end, I don't really want to spoil it for everybody.
You can spoil it for me. We'll just mute the.
Well, okay, so without giving away the ending, during the credits, they have, and it's not like an end credit scene. It's just like. They show this clip, and then this guy's talking. And all of a sudden, he's talking about there's a guy who's half man, half fish, who's swimming in the ocean, and he's taking over the oceans. And you're like, oh, okay, they're trying to build like a universe. And then he goes, and then there's this woman, and it's like this woman of a shriek. It's like a picture of this shrieking woman, like an old picture that you'd see in books. That's like drawn real bad, like of the Salem witch trials.
Right.
And it's like she goes around choking people with her rope. And then it shows up another few things, and you can see another guy who's wearing like all red, like armor almost. And you're like, okay, so that's Aquaman, Wonder Woman, and the Flash.
Right.
So they're building this dark universe for
now, who is the creators behind this?
I don't know. It wasn't a comic
universe.
book. It wasn't a comic book movie.
Okay.
James Gunn directed it.
Okay.
What
else does he do? I'm not.
He did.
Movie scene, so.
He did Guardians of the Galaxy.
Okay.
Is the big one that he's famous for now.
Okay.
And then I guess he's gonna do a DC movie as well.
All right.
And then they brought him back on for Guardians 3. So yeah, it was really good. It was really interesting. You can definitely see like where they're trying to follow exactly, but then you can see how Superman could have gone very wrong very fast. But yeah, it was good.
Okay, so is he a villain then essentially in the movie?
He kills a lot of people in horrible ways for not very good reasons.
Next to nothing.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, and I mean, in the movie, he's a 12-year-old kid.
Oh, okay.
And it's not just that, like, one day he goes, well, I'm a sociopath.
Right.
There's, like, other things that happen in the movie that kind of lead to all of this.
Okay.
I kind of wish they would have made the movie about 15 minutes longer and kind of developed that part a little bit more. Yeah. Because the transition from this kid to this kid went pretty quick.
Right.
And
it felt a little forced then.
Yeah. Well, and I think it was probably due to editing.
Right.
They were like, well, we can't have a movie that's longer than an hour and a half. So, like, all right, whatever. But it was really good. I think it'll be better for me if I watch it whenever it's on, like, TV.
Right.
Instead of going back.
Or
in a theater full of people would be nice. I wouldn't mind seeing it there. But like I said, I don't get scared at movies. But I was like, my heart was racing. I was nervous. Yeah. I'm like, oh, because you never know when something gross is going to happen. Yeah. And so I think that was part of it. So, like, I don't want to see anything gross.
Do you think that's the reason people enjoy horror movies? Is like this building up of suspense or something?
Yeah, it's the tension. It's the release. It's the part where I think it's safe for you to have some sort of reaction like that. It's a little mini adrenaline rush because you don't have to jump out of an airplane. You can sit in a movie and get the adrenaline rush. Nothing bad's going to happen to you while you're sitting there watching the movie. So I think that's part of it. It's like an endorphin dump.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know.
It's too much for me. Like, it's not necessarily in the theater moments. It's the what effing paranoia type scary situation.
It's not like the jump scares.
Yeah, it's like it's later on after the movie when I'm like, oh, I'm by myself in my car and it's dark out and there's no one else around and what's gonna happen kind of moments.
See, you know? And sometimes, like, I'm not a huge fan of, like, slasher movies. Yeah. Where it's like a crazy guy's going around killing people.
Right. But
if it's, Annabelle, who's, a haunted doll or whatever, I don't have to worry about haunted dolls.
Right, it's a little more divorced from actual reality.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not worrying about dolls running around my house.
Right, yeah, absolutely.
And if there was a doll running around my house, I'm pretty sure I could take it.
That's a good fair point. Yeah. Fair point.
A buddy of mine, we were watching The Conjuring or something. And have you ever seen?
No.
So there's this game that they play where the kids hide, and whoever's looking for them can go like that, and the other person has to go. Okay, so the kids are looking for each other, and they keep hearing this clapping, and then the kid turns around, and out of the wardrobe you see these, like, black rotten hands go like that, and it's supposed to, like, freak you out, whatever. And then, like, pantry doors are always shutting and stuff like that. Well, okay, Ghost wants to slam my doors. I'll just take the doors off the hinges. No more pantry doors. Go ahead, try to slam a door now. See what happens. I mean, there are ways that you could frustrate the poltergeist or whatever. Like, you want to turn on the TV? All right, no more TV. We're getting rid of TV. We'll be a TV-less house. Just have books. We'll read books. Everybody's reading books. Or I'll just have my phone. I can stream, whatever. So we sat there and we just picked it apart. Like, no, that's not what would happen.
That is.
You're not getting me to play. You can clap all you want. I'm not looking for you. Come on. But yeah, it's there are some silly things that happen in scary movies, but then some people get it just right. Like the kid they got for this Brightburn was perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a 12-year-old kid, had 12-year-old kid, attitude, stuff like that, acted like a 12-year-old kid. And then found out that he was also Superman. And so the things that went through, and you can kind of feel for him. And what I found myself doing was the whole time be like, okay, where's his redeeming moment?
Right.
Like, at some point he's going to turn and be like, oh, man, what I'm doing is wrong. And this and that and the other. And so I found myself kind of rooting for that.
Okay, yeah, that's a good...
Yeah.
Good quality to pull out in the movie.
Yeah, it may or may not have happened, but... I guess you'll never know.
I guess I'll never know.
But, all right. So, let's dive into Vader issue 1. Now, I've played around with the idea, instead of having one giant video, of like stopping this, having a segment
Right.
after we finish issue 1, and then hitting recording issue 2.
Sure.
And that way I could have like a slow drip, but that also seems like a lot of work. So I'm gonna
you want to do.
well, I'm gonna contemplate it a little bit more.
All right.
I just kind of want to know what your thoughts were on the long form, because I get a lot of feedback from long form versus short clips. And personally, I hate going online whenever I'm on YouTube and saying, "Oh, here's a clip of something." I hate that.
I mean, if it's interesting enough, I'll watch a long thing, podcast or video on YouTube. I also don't mind clips either. I find some of those valuable if they're interesting as well. I guess if it piques my interest, I'll stay tuned. If it doesn't, then I'm like, yeah, I'm out. I'll find something else.
Yeah, it just seems to me like the clips are just an advertisement to pull you in so that you go watch the longer clip. Yeah. So just show me the longer clip.
Right.
But I don't know. So on the very front of this volume, there's a quote that says, "Vader will never get away from his Jedi demons." Like, what is that supposed to mean?
I don't know. I mean, up to the course so far in this Vader run, he keeps encountering Jedi who keep recalling different things about him in his past. So I wonder if that's part of it. I don't know. That seems almost too easy of an explanation, but.
Well, I mean, when I think of demons, I think of like, oh, I used to be an alcoholic, and now that's like haunting me. Or I did this a long time ago, and that's haunting me. But everything he's done that was bad, he did as a Sith. Right. So is this just kind of a play on, well, all of the good things that he used to be are now like dragging him back? Or it was just kind of, I don't know. It's weird to think about because with Vader, you kind of have to think backwards sometimes because for him, Anakin's dead. That's what everybody keeps saying. Anakin's dead. And yet, we open up with this dream or whatever sequence of the scene from
Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah, Revenge of the Sith, where Obi-Wan's like, I have the high ground. You can't win. You were supposed to be the chosen one, stuff like that. But
I suppose that quote could play into the Jedi demons because there's expectation that's always placed on him of being the chosen one and a certain trajectory or path that he's supposed to fulfill. But what ends up happening is not what anyone's expecting.
So the fight plays out the exact opposite of what happened in the movie. Instead of Anakin standing there, it's Vader. Vader picks up Kenobi, throws him in the lava, and then he dies on fire.
There you go. He's burning his Jedi demon.
Yeah. Well, and what's cool is in the other Vader, we have this exact same scene. And instead of this happening, now keep in mind this is an older Vader who's dealing with all of this stuff. Instead of seeing this happening, Vader is mad at Obi-Wan for not killing him.
Right.
So instead of him conquering this portion and saying, you know what, I'm killing you off, you're no longer, in control of me, this is what I was supposed to do to fulfill my destiny. It's, I hate myself so much, I hate you for not killing me, that's what drives me, and it's more of a self-loathing. Right. Whereas here, we still see Anakin peeking through, it's like, no, I'm the best.
Right.
And I'm fulfilling my destiny, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, so he's still all in on the Emperor at this point.
Right.
Which, changes based on what issue you're reading, but because
sometimes he's like willing and subservient, and then other times he's like kind of seems like he's plotting or doing his own thing.
And that's the whole nature of the Sith is that there's one master, one teacher, or one master, one student, and the student will kill the master.
Right.
And if he doesn't, then the master kills the student and finds a new student.
Right.
So it's not like nobody's expecting him to finally just be like, all right, it's time for you to die. Like, that's what Palpatine's grooming him to do, is to kill him. Or at least try. So then Vader wakes up. He gets out of his little chamber. They put his helmet back on. Which I always love when they add those scenes in there. Because you forget that there's a person underneath all of that.
I think on the back of this, on the back cover, it shows him.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably one of my favorite shots.
Yeah, it's a more realism.
Yeah, I really liked that one. It's kind of this shot, but filled out more.
Right. And I don't know if you knew it, but whenever they made the Star Wars originally, is supposed to be like heavily influenced by World War II.
Okay.
Which is why all of the ships are kind of... the spaceships are supposed to be like the naval ships, and I don't know. It's supposed to be heavily reliant on...
Trying to draw on like the bad guy Nazi type images.
Right, and we really see that right here.
That's
we have the Imperial, the Imperial Palace,
Definitely.
And you have the red curtains hanging with the logo and everything.
Of course, Darth Vader's helmet kind of has that curvature that the Nazi helmet's head had.
Yeah, it's clear symbolism there. It's you almost can't trust any sort of nation that has a banner with their logo on it. Like what? Throughout history, the Nazis just ruined banners for everybody. I think that's the main takeaway we can get from World War II, right?
No other serious things happened.
Ironically, on the history or on the anniversary of D-Day.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay, so for me, they're talking about Palpatine saying, okay, it's been a year. People still think I'm just a figurehead.
Right.
People still think I'm just holding a place, and then the Senate will be reinstated, and then everybody goes back to the way things were. Right now, we have to prove to them, nope, we're here to stay. Right. We will be an empire.
Bring the hammer down.
Right. Kind of let everybody know that the Republic is dead. And it's amazing to me how willing they were to just, what do they say? And this is how the Republic dies, with thunderous applause, right? The scary thing is we see stuff like this now, right? Especially whenever something terrible happens.
Right.
As soon as something terrible happens, the first thing anybody wants to do is, all right, what can we take away to make sure that this never happens again?
Right.
9/11 happens, and then all of a sudden, people are like, yep, Patriot Act, let's go. We really want that.
Full speed ahead.
Right, but 5 years before 9/11, if you introduce it, they'd be like, no, that's stupid.
Right.
You can't do that. That's infringing on our rights.
Yeah.
If you tried to introduce it now, they would say that. And yet, people are more than willing to give up any sort of freedom not for safety,
right,
but for the idea of safety.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Because you're not actually any safer. I mean, using a real world example, like we have all these security measures in place,
Right.
And I mean, it's obviously doing something, but at the same time, it's not foolproof, and people can still, do terrorism.
We say it's doing something until, 2 years ago, that crazy guy went and stole a plane and was just flying it around for an hour.
Was it Seattle?
Yeah.
Or Portland? Oh, yeah, that was nuts to me.
Yeah.
Like,
okay.
If he can do it, who else can do that?
And he's just sitting there talking to air traffic control.
Didn't he do the loop-de-loop?
Yeah, he goes, I'm gonna do a loop. And he's in a passenger plane.
Yeah, not intended to do things like that.
And so, I mean, we say that, TSA is making us safe, and all these regulations are making us safe, and all of this stuff, and then something like that happens. You're like, wait, you're not doing anything.
Yeah.
I mean,
So it's an illusion, right?
Right.
It's to help me feel like the world's a safer place, and
right.
I don't have to feel threatened, and everything's taken care of.
Yeah, so essentially, you're giving up something real, but you're only getting something fake.
Right. Yeah, because the risk is still there. I just don't see it as risk, or I don't think the risk exists to the degree that it did.
Yeah, but people make this judgment based on emotion.
Sure.
Well, we have to protect people. Lives matter, right? Everybody, we have to save lives. And whenever you frame it like that, they're like, oh, well, yeah, I don't want people to die, so I don't want to be a monster.
Yeah, because,
so
because then you're stuck in an either-or situation where if you don't agree...
Then that means you want people to die.
Yes, exactly. And then you're like, well, that's not what I said, and that's not what I think either. But now you're painting me as a villain.
Right. Yeah.
I want to go around killing people.
If I don't agree to the Patriot Act, that means I agree with the terrorists. Or if I don't agree that all guns should be melted down into plows, then I think children should die.
Right.
I mean, it's crazy, but that tactic works, and we've seen it work. I mean, not just in the comic, but I mean, how did Hitler take power?
Yep.
Right? He convinced everybody that the Jews were the reason they lost World War I.
Yeah.
And he came in and he offered them a way out of the debt, a way out of all this, and all they had to do was give up some morals or give up some freedoms.
It seems, I mean, it's a repeat throughout human history where me and my group, however big that group may be, chooses to define the terms, if you will. Like, what is it that is the right thing to do? And if you and your group don't want to participate with me, then you're you're in opposition and you need to be taken out.
Well, and that's the same thing as it's the same thing as saying you can have freedom until you disagree with me, and then I'm not protecting you anymore.
Right.
And not just am I not protecting you anymore, but I'm actively fighting you.
Right.
I mean, we saw that with the Roman Empire all the time. All you have to do is pay taxes to the Roman Empire. And you can have whatever religion you want. You can have whatever you want. Okay, so they pay the taxes. Well, now you have to do this too. Well, I don't want to do that. All right, now we're going to attack you.
Well, now we have a problem.
Right. Yeah.
It's and the guy with the biggest guns or the most guns wins in some sense.
Yeah, and we see this happening in the story too.
Absolutely.
And I love Tarkin whenever they introduce I love him in this whole setup.
That was probably one of my favorite. Was he in the previous arc as well?
No, this is where they first introduced him.
I couldn't remember if they had introduced him at the end of the last one or not.
No, I don't think so.
But this is probably one of my favorite arcs because of Tarkin. I love the foil he plays with.
Right. Well, and the thing is too, he goes through, and it's a legitimate military strategy.
Right.
Right? We have this planet. We need them to comply. Now, we can do this one or two ways. We can go in, blow them all up, which is what you would expect out of a comic book, right? Because that's the exciting part, is the fight and the war. And they could have done that here. They could have just said, they're disagreeing with us, yada, yada, everything that happened before.
Yeah.
But they specifically put in here the part where he's like, I want to try to do this without bloodshed. And they spend, what?
Several pages, I think.
Yeah, 4 pages. 4 pages on just how to avoid violence. But he's also got, the violent option ready.
A giant gun.
Yeah. So, for me, it really set up the reality of, like, this is what people do in our war rooms every day.
Yeah.
And I couldn't imagine the stress that's going to be.
Right, well, and even having to, like... I was just reading a book, and he was reflecting on an author who wrote a fictional account about World War I.
Mm-hmm.
And he was, in the fictional account, this guy is in Italy. So he's an older man with a younger man. And they're looking up at the mountains where all this fighting is going on in Italy. And they keep seeing flashes, and he's like, he says, you see the flash? Every flash is someone's life disappearing. Mm-hmm. And he said, when you see one flash, and you realize it's a human life being lost, it's something drastic. Then the next second you see another one, and suddenly it becomes just a number. And you go,
right.
The step from the first realization to the second flash, and then seeing successive ones,
right?
It abstracts it to a place
Yeah.
of it's a numbers game, and I think that's how you have to think if you're in these war rooms. You know, you can't think about it in terms. I mean, you think about it in terms of like, oh, it's human cost, and there's going to be consequences.
Yeah.
But the individual.
When the craziest
that's difficult to wrap your mind around, especially if you have to make difficult decisions every day.
The craziest thing is, you know, especially with today being the anniversary of D-Day and stuff like that. Eisenhower ordered them to storm this beach, and there is a 0% chance that there were going to be no American deaths. Right? He knew it was going to be horrific. He knew thousands of people could potentially die because they stormed with what, 4,000 people?
I don't remember what the numbers are.
It was something enormous.
Yeah.
Because they knew they had to. This was the most fortified place on planet Earth at this point. And so after he made the order, he also wrote a note that said, I take full responsibility and I accept any consequence that comes if this fails. Because this was, all right, half of you might die right here.
Right.
Easy. All of you might die, but I have faith in you. Half of you are going to end up winning this for us.
Right.
And just to make a decision and saying, I'm willing to sacrifice this many people.
Yeah.
That's insane to me. Like, I couldn't do it. There's no way I could do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You almost have to be a you almost have to be a sociopath to be able to do this, because you're like, these are acceptable losses. And it's not saying acceptable losses as I'm playing chess, I can lose my pawn. Right. You're saying these are lives of people who belong to my club, right? This is my club. These are my people. And I'm willing to sacrifice this many.
Yeah.
And nobody bats an eye about it. Nobody's like, oh, you're a horrible person. Now, if he were to go through and say, okay, Steve and Carla and Frank and he named people like, these guys I'm willing to lose, then he's a monster.
But not those.
Right. As soon as you put names and faces to it, then you're a monster. But if you're just like, nope, here's my army, I'm willing to lose half, let's go.
Yeah. I think it kind of strikes me, people in history who are willing to accept the loss of life like that, but at the same time aren't. You can tell that they still are invested with the people who are serving or fighting for them.
Right. Yeah.
That's got to be. It'd be one thing to just not be involved with them. You're up here in the bunker all the time and never talking to anybody. But to actually day in and day out be visiting, the people who are fighting for you, and hearing the stories and seeing the losses, and
you're not disconnected from it.
That's got to be. I totally agree with you. I wouldn't ever want to be in that position. I'd never choose it. A lot of respect to people who do find themselves in those situations and still maintain the human element of what's going on.
Well, and the thing that also strikes me is that we do all of this same stuff anyway. Right. They're talking about going in and setting up propaganda so that the two different races on this planet start fighting each other.
That was an interesting...
To destabilize the government, and then they fight each other, and then we just go in and pick up what's left.
Yeah.
And, we know that happens constantly.
Yeah.
And it's, again...
You kind of see it playing out in Venezuela right now, right?
Yeah. And the thing is, okay, are we down there destabilizing a government? Other than backing the one guy...
Right.
In public and sending resources down, it makes you wonder, okay, did we have people down there fomenting revolution? Did we have what's going on?
Right, what's going on behind the scenes?
How involved are we?
Yeah, exactly.
Because these guys make it sound like, we could do this, no problem. Yeah. And it won't take too long and it'll get done.
Yeah, what's our time
All we have to do is put some pictures up, make some commercials, and we'll be good. But yeah, it's that kind of shadow government thing.
Yeah.
And again, they could have left all of this out. I don't know what they would have filled it with. More fighting, maybe. But the fact that it shows them trying to make a peaceful resolution.
Right.
For one, it shows that the Empire is willing to work with people.
Right.
So, because they still have to... It's been a year, but people, like they said, people still expect him just to say, okay, now we have a republic again now that the
Well, I think to
thing's
add some
over.
of that human element that we were just talking about, like, it's easy. I mean, this is a trend we've seen in the last the two story arcs where it's like
Right.
Vader is initially portrayed in the movies as this, evil villain, dark figure or whatever, and he does terrible things for sure.
Yeah.
But like in this comic, they're injecting that human element where you're like, well, is there something still in there within him that's redeemable or positive?
Right.
And I think this is another take on that where they're injecting that element of like, as opposed to just black and white. It's like it's not like the Empire just goes in and always destroys everything
Right.
all the time. It's like no, there is a value in not leveling civilizations and planets. Like you have to rebuild it, and
That's also how you get people mad at you and start rebellions. I mean,
go ahead, keep rebelling. We'll just
and somebody brings that up. She says, "Why are we planning a complex, multi-stage assault? We have these giant ships that can just blast them all to nothing. Why don't we do that?" And Tarkin's got probably one of the smartest lines in the whole comic. The power of an empire is not what it destroys, but what it controls. Right? We can go in and wipe you out. Easy. Without losing a single life on our end, we can do this. But it's more profitable. It's better image. It's better everything. It's better for us if we can get them to just say, yeah, okay, we agree to your terms. For one, it shows that the Empire is willing to negotiate and not be unreasonable.
Right.
But it also doesn't try to rule through fear, which is kind of ironic because that's what Sith are all about, is ruling through fear. But yeah, I really that whole line resonated with me where he's like, we're not going to destroy it.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that kind of plays out later. But
and so, how does Tarkin strike you, and at least how they're portraying him here initially? Like, if you had to describe him in a sentence based on what you're reading here, what would you say?
So, he's a very patient, but everything he says is thought out.
Right.
He doesn't do anything without preparation. He never goes in blindly, and he doesn't let his emotions control him. Yeah. Even when things seem out of his control, all he's thinking about is how to get back in control. He never panics, ever. And we really see that later on.
Right. Absolutely.
But yeah, he's very calm, very cool. He doesn't do anything unless he knows that he can win.
Yeah. To me, the words I would use he's calculated, and he's strategic, and he doesn't just have a backup plan. It's like, I don't know. I don't play strategy games or even chess, but I understand people to say, oh, sure, thanks. People who are like master chess players can think about multiple moves out into the future. Like, I can't do that. But that's what I'm envisioning in my head. He's got all these pathways that are open-ended.
I love playing chess. I used to be really good at it, but nobody plays with me anymore.
Are you too good?
I don't know that I'm too good. It's that I don't let people win. So if I'm teaching you how to play, then you're going to learn through defeat.
You're going to need to learn by losing.
Yeah, you're going to learn through defeat.
Then I probably won't play chess with you either.
Yeah, and it's not that I'm like ruthless and I'm making fun of you and talking crap or anything like that, but like I'm not going to let you win.
Sure.
I'll go through and we'll do a practice round or whatever, and I'll say, okay, here's what I'm going to do. Right. Now and then you need to make a decision based off of that. And that is how you have to think. Is I have my main line strategy that I'm going with. I'm going to move this here, 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 and I have it 5-6 moves ahead. Now, that's if you move perfectly based on what I'm going to do.
Right.
So I've also got a strategy that's maybe 2 moves ahead, but that splinters off over here. And then another 2 moves that splinters off over here. So I have about 16 or 17 moves kind of sort of planned out, but my main strategy I have planned way out ahead. And then every other strategy, all I'm trying to do is I have a contingency and I'm trying to move back
into the main flow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is, I mean, that's exactly what Tarkin's doing.
Absolutely.
The plan is get the resources and then move on.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how we do that is up to them.
Right.
If they do this, then we're going to do this, 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 but we're going to move it back over here. If we're going to do this, we're going to move it back over here.
Yeah.
And what I'd like to really get into is playing the 3-dimensional chess.
Oh, I've never seen that.
Yeah, I don't even know anybody who plays that. They're smaller boards,
Okay.
but yeah, it's here, here, and here, and you have to move certain way. Yeah, it's
that
crazy.
Sounds really crazy.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to end up watching it on like YouTube or something.
Pre-game.
Yeah. But Palpatine can't just go around like blasting planets.
Right.
Like, hey, we want your resources and we'll buy them from you. No, all right, boom. Right? And I think if it were up to Palpatine, then that might be what happened. Because that's just kind of how Palpatine is. Like, I'm not going to take insurrection from you. Palpatine also plays 3-dimensional chess, but he's not... He understands that his pieces need to be able to move. And that's why he puts people like Tarkin in charge.
Right.
And then he just kind of lets him go. Or he puts Vader out there and he just kind of lets him go. But yeah, I don't see Palpatine kind of dealing with the Mon Calamari like Tarkin does.
Right.
But yeah, it's if you just go around blasting people, it's a real easy way to like foment rebellion.
Right, you're going to kickstart more rebellion.
You're also going to destroy whatever it is you're trying to get off of there, right? If I blow up a planet, I don't get those resources anymore.
And so, maybe this is jumping ahead a few pages, but they mention the Mon Calamari have a particular, is it a resource?
Yeah.
And I wasn't quite sure what they were referencing.
It was like kelp something. I don't know. Everything's like an ocean reference.
Right.
I mean, it's just one of those things. But yeah, it was something that they needed from them. But also, if they go in and they negotiate, it looks good on the side of the Empire. If negotiations fall through, it looks bad on the Mon Calamari because they have a treaty with the Empire. If the Mon Calamari attack, or if the Mon Calamari attack, it really looks bad on them, but the Empire still looks good. And if the Empire attacks them, then they're still in the right because the Mon Calamari broke treaty. So all of this is just to use them to send a message.
Right.
And we see that all throughout, that this poor king just gets used.
Well, it's kind of funny to me because this probably won't be very popular with a lot of people, but it seems to be that's kind of how we play as the politics game in the world stage. Is we go park our Star Destroyer, aircraft carrier, off the coast somewhere, and then we are like, all right, let's make a deal, and it's like, well, you're putting someone in a position where it's like, if you don't make a deal, there's a consequence, and if you don't deal the way we're trying to deal now, then there's a consequence. But if you do something to go behind our back, then that's a problem.
Don't mind us as as all we're doing is running military simulations right outside of we're doing military exercises right off your coast.
It's a vacation, actually.
Don't worry about it. Just ignore us. That's all we're doing. We always like to park right off of North Korea's coast and run things. So basically, the Mon Calamari have to sell whatever it is that they're resources at a fraction of the market.
Right.
But then they also get protection from the Empire.
Protection.
Right. Well, okay, so whenever they say protection from the Empire, it's not just that, oh, the Empire is going to protect us.
Right.
It's that you've made us happy, so now we won't attack you.
We won't blow you up.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're getting protection from the Empire. They're protecting you from themselves. But we also see a little bit of the, like you were saying, speak softly but carry a big stick.
Right.
Like this guy seems like he's got a pretty good relationship. He's nice and cool, calm, collected. Hey, this isn't going anywhere. I'm just going to go back, and then we'll just keep talking.
Right.
We'll come back when you're not so heated, when I have time to think about it. I'll pass some things on to my superiors. You talk it over with your people. But in the meantime, I'm just going to go back to my giant tank that's sitting right outside your house.
We'll give you some time to think about it, but, here's the time limit.
Yeah, as I fly up to my Star Destroyer, which is named because it can
guns.
destroy stars.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah. We see, everything's kind of going according to plan. Right. It's not supposed to be something that just happens immediately. But then Vader shows up, and Tarkin doesn't seem like he knew that Vader was coming.
Right.
And he kind of knows that this means trouble.
The peaceful solution is probably not an option anymore.
Right. Well, and Tarkin even says it, goes, oh, that's a different kind of negotiator.
Right.
And so Tarkin has no idea why he's there at this point. At least that's not what it seems like. Do you think Palpatine did that on purpose? He keeps different divisions shut up? Because it would be if he wants a successful mission here, it'd be in his best interest to say, hey, Tarkin, there's a Jedi on the planet. I'm sending Vader.
Yeah, it definitely seems like, and this unfolds a little more later on, but they're being pitted against one another. Whether that's, I can, obviously, Palpatine's like a master deception manipulator, but even if he's not doing it, like the fact that Tarkin is this plotter, strategist, calculated, type of guy.
Right.
And Vader's kind of more of your, I don't want to say brute force, but that tends to be his go-to method, or using the force to some degree.
Especially in this run. There's a distinct difference between Vader in this run and his other run where he's 20 years older.
Yeah.
And here he is more of a not so much strategy. I'm going in as a blunt instrument.
Right. So he's rash.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm going to go in. I'm going to kill what needs to be killed, and then maybe a few other things.
Right.
In future issues, he's right up there with Palpatine, and he's got plans on top of plans on top of plans, and it's all going to work out in his favor no matter what.
I think you get a little bit of that in because was it Volume 1? He took the data card with all the kids' names or whatever.
Yeah.
So you see little bits and pieces where he's like kind of planning his own segment, but it definitely, I could see where it develops more into a Tarkin feel.
Yeah. We see the negotiators' ship blow up, and then Vader's like, so I guess things aren't working out the way that you thought they were? Because Admiral Akbar, or who will become Admiral Akbar, says, we're in negotiations. Negotiations are peaceful.
Right.
We're not going to let you on. And then, so that's when Vader's like, I think you're mistaken.
We're going to need to have a chat now.
Right. So, again, this kind of goes in favor of Palpatine and the Empire. Because now it kind of shows some destabilization because it looks like the Mon Calamari did it. Right, and that's what everybody's assuming. That's what Tarkin's assuming.
Right.
Only Vader really knows that there's a Jedi here.
Right.
And either the Jedi did this or the Jedi told them to do this. But either way, he's there to get to the bottom of it.
Right.
So Tarkin prepares for war. We find out there is, in fact, a Jedi here. So why would a Jedi look to start this war? Ignoring the fact that you've read the rest of it.
Right.
Like, why would a Jedi just show up on your planet and be like, hey, I'm a Jedi. You remember us? And then the king's like, yeah, I remember. You guys are awesome.
I mean, the way they're presenting the Mon Calamari is that they're a very strategic people, kingdom, planet, race, and they have special resources that people need. So they have political influence and pull.
Right.
So I could see that being the basis of your, like, if you can get these people in with you, or to start doing what you want, or to go against the Empire, then other people will follow.
But why not just be open with the king and be like, listen, I need you guys to do this. You guys are going to play a key role, but we have to go to war.
Right.
Or you have to start a rebellion or something. Why mislead the king throughout all this?
It does kind of seem like a Sith type of thing to do, doesn't it?
It does. Seems very Sith-like.
Man, I don't know. I think... I mean, there's always the angle where... Again, like, the Jedi are always presented as these, like, guys who have the greatest good at heart or whatever. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, there's this ploy maybe for, I don't know, going down a selfish route. And so, again, the brilliant thing about this comic run is it's reversing the script on the clear, defined boundaries that you have on all the characters and the Jedi and the Sith. So it's adding more complexity and nuance to it.
Well, because the Empire, so the Sith, are the ones looking for a peaceful resolution to all of this. And then the Jedi is the one who's creating war and death and destruction. Right? And so you could make the argument that, you know, the Sith are the good guys in this because they're being reasonable.
Right. It seems to me like they both have the same end in mind, right? Like the end justifies the means that we're using right now. So whether that's this Jedi wanting to kickstart something, or it's Tarkin using a peaceful end but with giant guns. Like they're both attempting power plays for what they think is best in the end, and they're willing to sacrifice some people to get there.
Right.
Which doesn't seem to be the way the Jedi presented to us in the movies, at least.
Right. But it's right up Tarkin's alley.
Oh, that's exactly.
So, issue 2 opens up, and we see full-on war going on. This is a planet that is completely ocean.
Right.
And then they have a couple of cities that they use just for, like, trading outposts. So, they're, like, floating cities. Are AT-ATs and Imperial Walkers really the best things to put?
That's so funny. I didn't even think about that, but now that you pointed it out, it seems really
They have no room to walk, and yet we see 2 Imperial Walkers and 2 AT-ATs on a little dome of metal.
This seems like it would have been the perfect opportunity to showcase some, like, other weapons in a comic avenue or something. I don't know. But you're right.
Yeah.
They're like walking around and you're like, there's very little land. Why would you...
Right. Why not just have nothing but TIE fighters and the ones drop off troops? But how do you even get them on there? Like, how do you just drop those?
Do they drop them in the movies?
I don't know. They never show. They're just always there. They have to be dropped.
It's a fascinating question.
But it just seems like the most pointless.
Because in the Clone Wars, they have what I would call the previous generations of walkers being dropped from these giant ships, I think. I think that's what happened. Maybe I'm misremembering.
Yeah, I don't know.
But they must have something like that. transport. Does the First Order have something that drops them off in the newest iteration of?
I don't think I remember seeing anybody dropping them off.
Maybe I just remember there's like a giant hangar bay, and these are like being picked up or
maybe.
or something.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the closest they came was in Rogue One.
Maybe it's
whenever they were coming out of like the garage, I guess.
It's one of the movies. I can't quite. People are going to be crucifying me.
One of the 20 movies.
One of the movies. There's a giant hangar full of walkers, and they're being picked up. It looks like to me.
Right. Yeah.
Anyways.
So yeah, it's just a bloodbath. The Inquisitors and Vader having no problem killing all the people. But they're talking about the king. We got to go find the king. Right. He's like, we have to go up. And they're like, well, wouldn't he have been evacuated? I really like the callback to the Clone Wars, the TV series, because the king was in that, and he had interactions with Anakin. And
I never really watched
stuff like that.
Yeah,
so I really love cohesive universes.
Yeah.
And I know, obviously, Star Wars is all the Star Wars universe.
Right.
But I really love it like in Stephen King books where he ties it all together, that they're all connected and they're all in the same thing. So I can really appreciate the fact that we want you to know that what happened here has an impact on this.
So tell me fill me in on what happened in the Clone Wars.
So there was some sort of rebellion or attack. I think it goes back to the two races on that planet were fighting.
Okay.
And Anakin and Ahsoka Tano go back in, and they help quell the rebellion, shut everything down. They establish the king, and he rules over everything, or something along those lines.
Right.
But yeah, it was a very positive interaction between Anakin Skywalker and the king, and so he knows the king. I don't know that the king knows who Vader is.
Right.
But
it's funny because at first, my first impression of the king was like this inept kind of figure. Maybe I misread that or misinterpreted the first impression. But his character doesn't develop that way. Well, it doesn't seem that way to me as the story progresses. He takes on this kind of noble king type character.
Right, he's always in the mix.
Right.
He doesn't just take off and bury himself. Yeah.
Or just he's not a pawn either. He or a puppet, I guess.
When I like the fact that this whole thing, this whole battle, this whole war is all just a misunderstanding that was brought on by a lie from a Jedi.
Right.
And all of these people are dying. All of this destruction's happening. Because these two don't know what's really going on. And then Vader's the one who's trying to root out the guy who started all this.
Right.
But I also like the interaction between the king and Tarkin. You know, when he goes, hey, I still want a peaceful resolution of this, but you have to stop attacking me. And he's like, well, we can't stop attacking you because you did this. And like, listen, if you don't stop, then we're just going to have to fight you.
Right.
It's two immense levels of pride hitting up against one another. And the other one can't move because then they look weak.
Exactly.
And I mean, how often does that happen?
Never.
Yeah.
Whether it's in our own lives or in the lives of all the politicians we're watching.
Well, and it's very much what could have happened whenever we had the Cuban Missile Crisis, right? I mean, this is what could have happened.
No, that was explained by the X-Men.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Yeah, the X-Men came in. Gotcha. I forgot about that. I didn't realize they released those documents yet.
Top secret.
Yeah.
You'll have to put that in the subsection heading on the podcast.
Yeah.
Cuban Missile Crisis finally explained.
Yeah. Did I tell you what happened? I did an episode and I said that Star Wars created Wolverine was the tagline.
You were telling me that. Yeah, that's right.
And then somebody got mad about it. Like, mad. and went into the whole history. Well, Wolverine was created this, this, and this, and that was so many years before Star Wars was even created.
Is there gonna have to be like a new symbol to symbolize like you're joking at the end of something?
I don't know. There's gonna have to be something. I tried to do it again. I said that in-game copied Star Wars. In-game stole Star Wars ending because the last volume of the other Vader is called End of Games.
Oh, okay.
And in the episode we kind of made some very loose connections that proved that it was all connected.
That's great.
So the guy didn't bite though. So this is kind of the perfect situation for the Empire.
Right.
At this point. So the Mon Cala either broke the treaty or is some sort of wild planet that needs supervision. And the Empire can be the one that provides either the supervision or the one who puts them back in their place.
Yeah.
So no matter what, they come out smelling like roses, right?
Yeah, they get what they want in the end. And of course, to the broader galaxy, the rest of the Republic, if you will, or what is it technically? It's technically not a republic right now.
It's the Empire.
The Empire, okay.
Yeah.
Headed by the temporary dictator warlord. Yeah, it's definitely playing into Palpatine's hands exactly how they wanted it.
Well, and okay, it's almost like let's see. When that one guy from Saudi Arabia went into the Turkish embassy,
oh right,
and then never came out,
right?
But then they found pieces of his body like thrown out.
The journalist guy, yeah,
right. And everybody knows what happened, right? Everyone, every single person, but since they have plausible deniability, then publicly. We can't say we know you did it.
Right.
So that's exactly what they have here is everybody knows what's happening on Mon Cala. Everybody knows that they went there, they sent Vader, Vader did all this. The Empire is bullying them into submission. But since the Empire can say, well, they broke the treaty.
They blew up the...
Right. They did this. They attacked us. We were negotiating in good faith, and you attacked us. They have, essentially a free pass.
Right.
And publicly, even though we all know what's going on, the way it looks, they can say, technically, they broke the treaty first. We didn't do anything.
It's that whole idea of you're negotiating from the place of power, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So do you think, because Tarkin says there's not going to be any surprises.
Right.
We know what we're doing.
And of course, he still doesn't know that there's a Jedi figure or Jedi...
He doesn't, or does he?
Well, I don't remember. Does Vader let him in on that, or he...
I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying at this point, is he acting out of ignorance? Or does Tarkin know and he's using this opportunity?
Right.
Because you got to remember, 3D chess. Tarkin's not an idiot.
3D
He knows. Well, he knows who the Inquisitors are.
Yeah.
He knows Vader's leading the Inquisitors.
Right. So obviously there's something else going on, but what exactly is it?
Right. He might not know the details, but I think he's kind of putting pieces together.
Right. Well, and of course he has to know who the Inquisitors are and what their role and responsibility is.
Right.
He would not be Tarkin if he didn't know that.
Yeah.
At least for Tarkin, where we think he is.
So, I mean, this is essentially just Tarkin saying, okay, let's make the best out of a bad situation. Right. This isn't the way I wanted it to go, but it's the way it's going, so we have contingencies for this. Then we meet Master Bar, who knows who Skywalker is. He's showing his, I guess you'd call them Padawans.
Right.
Although they're adults. He's showing them who Anakin Skywalker is. and why he's so dangerous, and then him killing the younglings. But he keeps talking about balance. He was supposed to bring balance to the Force. And then he says he was supposed to bring balance to the Force and eradicate the dark side. So what kind of balance is that? The Jedi always talk about, well, he has to bring balance to the Force.
Right, yeah.
You can't have balance if it's good and good.
Right. Yeah, I don't... It definitely seems like a funny... I mean, in the movies, it's simple, right?
Yeah.
In the comics here, they're definitely unloading this or giving you this perspective and angle where you're like, okay, that was almost too simplistic. Like, it doesn't make sense if you even remotely start to ask, well, what happens when you get rid of the dark side?
Right.
It comes back, because if you need balance, then that's what's
When we've
balanced.
seen that in the movies too, is that you had Palpatine and Vader.
Right.
And in response to that, you see Luke rise up.
Right.
And then you lose those two. You have Luke, who's light side, and then you have Snoke or Kylo rise up. And then Luke shuts himself off to the Force, so you just have the dark side. And then you have Rey rise up. So there's always somebody rising up to balance that Force.
Yeah.
So even if you went through and you wiped out all Force users except for one, whether they were good or bad. Let's say they were good. So they're light side.
Right.
You have a light side who follows the light side, does everything they're supposed to do. Then there will be, according to how things have shaken out so far, there will be somebody else who pops up who's going to be dark side. Or vice versa. Because there has to be balance.
So do you think maybe what the Jedi are trying to do are eradicate as quickly as possible anything that pops its ugly head up that they don't approve of, that's connected to the dark side?
Originally what they did was they tried to eradicate the dark side through education.
Okay.
If we can get them when they're young,
right,
we can train them and then teach them all about everything. Right. Because what's going to happen naturally is if you just have Force users popping up everywhere,
right,
somebody's going to be like, well, I could rob a bank with these powers, or
right,
I could do this with these powers. Nobody could beat me with these powers. And so you're going to have somebody who rises up as dark side.
I think we've probably talked about this the last two times because I think we've brought this up multiple times, but it's still confusing to me that you can have tens of thousands of Jedi, at least that's how it appears. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's overdoing the numbers. Roaming the galaxy, and then you only have a pair of Sith, you know?
Well, and that's the thing. I talked to my other friend Jacob, who did the other thing, and Jedi is a status that you attain.
Right.
And Sith is a status that you attain. So all these Inquisitors, they're Force users, but they're not Sith.
So in other words, they're titles. If you
right.
Will. Okay. That makes more sense. 'Cause I guess the way I've always thought about it is it's
either a title, or it could be a level of power that you attain.
Okay, yeah.
And because I know in some of the cartoons, they have people who are just like ultra powerful Force users, and they're just off on their own planet, and then they're considered Sith, but they're super powerful.
Okay.
Or it could just be that they're not considered Sith until somebody who is Sith sees them and says, "Hey, I'm trained." Yeah. But yeah, it's more of a title that you attain.
So in other words, the Jedi are trying to craft their own empire, right?
Yes.
Through their idea of what it is to use the Force.
Right.
And so they're trying to influence and re-educate these Force-sensitive individuals into their way of doing.
Yeah. Well, and they take it to their extreme.
Right.
Right. So imagine if the dark side, light side are, Democrats and Republicans, or whatever, moose party and wigs if you don't want to get offended. So we'll just say, one side is light, one side is dark, but it's not like you or me or 50% of America who are closer to the middle.
Right.
We would just be considered regular Force users, Like I use it to pick up a broom, or I use it to wash dishes, or
and of
whatever.
Course your level of power is affects that as well.
But then the Sith and the Jedi are the ones who are like, well, I think that the Jews need to be eradicated because they're the ones running the media, or the ones on the other side that say, well, I think the government needs to tell us when to wake up and how many steps we can take in a day and how many cow farts can happen.
For the good of everyone, of course.
Right. Yeah, so they're both just extreme sides, and the irony is the Sith have accepted that.
Right.
The Sith know we throw everything out of balance, but we do it because we want power. The Jedi convinced themselves that we have to take this monk-like posture because any sort of emotion will drive you down to the dark side. Yeah, but if you want to bring balance to the Force, what you have to do is bring balance to yourself.
Right.
You can love somebody, and you can have feelings, and you can be angry, and you can be proud of what you've created. But for the Jedi, all of those things lead to the dark side.
Yeah.
So I don't know, that it's bringing balance to the Force was more in my mind about bringing balance to your own life, right? Moderation in everything, including moderation. Sometimes you just have to let go. Sometimes you have to just go wild and have fun, and then you don't do it for 3 weeks because you've got a terrible hangover and you don't feel good every time you see alcohol. But then you get those 3 weeks up and you're like, man, it's just time for me to go out and party again, right?
So bring it back to this particular individual. What is his name again?
Bar.
So Bar seems to be embracing some of the more dark side aspects. He's functioning in, he's willing to take people's lives to get what he wants in the end. He's willing to deceive people.
Sacrifice.
Sacrifice.
Because he doesn't actually kill anybody.
Right, the bomb, just happened.
Yeah.
Yes. He didn't pull the trigger?
No.
Who was that again who pulled the trigger?
He set all of this in motion, for sure. And he takes credit for it later on. But, he never really actively hurts anybody. He doesn't kill any of his students. He doesn't, he fights off the people who are attacking him. Right. But it's his way of holding that moral high ground.
Right.
Of,
But still getting what he wants in the end.
Right. And I don't know if it's next issue or what, but whenever they're systematically going through his Padawans, that was very... Reading through it again, I caught so much more, and I could just be looking more into it. But going back to this, he's explaining to the Padawans, the Jedi, and what all happened. And it's amazing to me how they emphasize how short everybody's memory is. Right? Everybody, the Jedi helped everyone. The Jedi helped the Republic grow immensely.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, boom, the Jedi are enemies. And then all of a sudden, nobody remembers who the Jedi are. And so it's, I get that the galaxy is so huge that sometimes you forget that there are entire systems that would have only heard of Jedi as a bedtime story.
Right.
But yeah, even people that were around the Jedi. Tarkin refers to it as magic.
Right.
I don't understand this magic.
Yeah, it is interesting. I feel like for so long they've only told the Star Wars story from the perspective of people with powers, if you will.
Yeah.
But Yeah, one of my other friends who's a big Star Wars guy, he was kind of referencing that too. Like, people think of the Force as this, like, magical thing, and most people don't know who Jedi are or haven't seen them. They just heard these mythical stories, so to speak. And I thought it would be kind of, I don't know if they could pull it off, but to tell a story, it would be great if they could do it in a movie, but I don't know if that would sell well.
Right.
Based on how they've already invested, into what the Star Wars universe is. But to tell the story from the perspective of some distant quadrant, out in the middle of nowhere, where there's no Jedi, and they just hear these distant rumors.
That was supposed to be the whole drive behind Rey being such an awesome character.
Right.
Was that she came from nothing. She was out in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
Nobody's heard of Jedi. There's a Star Destroyer that crashed there. So you've heard of the rebellion, but other than that, you don't know anything. You've never seen a Jedi. You've never met a Jedi. You've never heard of a Jedi.
Right.
And all of a sudden, you have these powers, and you're getting sucked into this world. And what worries me is that in this last movie, they're going to undo all that.
They're going to flip the script on us. Actually, she's
Yeah, actually, she's descended from this person and this person. Or, Padme actually had triplets, but one of them didn't develop. One of them didn't develop correctly. They were pushed into a test tube and didn't come out until 30 years. It's going to be something stupid like that.
No, they cloned.
Yeah.
They cloned her, and then they remade her at the clone facility.
Yeah, and then they just dropped her off. Yeah, it's going to be... I really hope they didn't, bow down to external pressures, but I'm worried that they did. Because that revelation in the second movie really kind of saved it for me. I loved all of it except for whenever they went to the planet with the horse racing. That
the casino.
Yeah, that didn't need to happen. Yeah. Everything else was pretty good. But the part that I loved was whenever they said, "Do you want to know who your parents are?" They were nobody. Right? You don't come from anybody important.
Right.
It doesn't matter who your parents are in the scope of things because they weren't important.
Right. I mean, it's the same idea with Finn. He's abducted from some random place in the galaxy, and then he's brainwashed, and he's a nobody. And yet he's caught up in the story, and I mean, I think that's the draw, even with Luke Skywalker, because I didn't know this because I am from a later generation, but everyone tells me that that's how, when you first watch the movies, that's who Luke Skywalker is. He's a nobody on a planet, and until later when you find out who's
right. And I think that's how it was originally supposed to be.
So did they change it there as well?
I think he was writing the script, and it had nothing to do with pressure from anybody. It was just he thought it'd be a cool idea, and so he wrote it into the script.
Okay.
But I think originally he was just supposed to be...
Right.
Well,
because it kind of is like... What I like about that tact is it gives the Force its own... The Force becomes a character, if you will, in the movies.
Right. It's not a hereditary disease that's passed on from person to person.
Where it's almost like an impersonal Force is acting almost personally to some degree, where things are being nudged and manipulated so that there's... Well, we're back to the balance idea.
Yeah.
But I like kind of... That's an intriguing part of the Star Wars narrative to me.
Yeah. Well, in the fact that I also... Okay, so the one good thing that came out of the casino scene was the kid who's sweeping, and he just goes...
Yeah.
And then he starts sweeping. Right? So it goes to show that, there are Force users popping up everywhere. Even after this genocide that came out.
Yeah.
There are Force users just popping up everywhere. And they don't necessarily have training, and they probably won't, but it's still there. It's not just in these few people that are hanging on to the last. Which also means if Rey, Kylo, and all these people die, that it's gonna continue.
Yeah.
The whole balance of the universe isn't hanging on these people.
Right.
Which also means that none of these people in the huge scope of things are important at all.
Right.
Right? It kind of just goes to show how big the galaxy and the universe as a whole is.
Yeah.
That if they all died right now, everything would just keep going.
It just keeps going, yeah.
Yeah. So, sorry about that tangent. Yeah, the way I see the Sith and everything, going back to, like, if you were trying to explain it to Rey as a little child, it would be like trying to go up to a kid in elementary school and saying, I'm going to tell you all about England. Right? And you tell them about England. You say, oh, they're on the other side of the world. They talk different. They drive on the other side of the road. They have Big Ben. But then I give them a test and expect them to understand how the government works, right? How they elect people to parliament and how the parliament elects somebody to be the whatever. That to me is what's going on when somebody tries to explain like the Sith or the Jedi to people have heard about it, right? I've heard stories about it. You tell the kid a story about England, but they're not going to understand it. They're not going to get that, oh, so this is like two sides of the same coin that have been fighting each other forever. And that's if they've even heard of the Sith, right? Even a lot of Jedi haven't heard of Sith or seen or experienced Sith.
Right. It's the boogeyman.
Right. And especially since there's only two ever
in
the whole galaxy.
I mean, that's kind of how the first, 3 episodes essentially goes. You towards the end, you find out there's a Palpatine figure and he's becomes the Emperor. But before that, there's no Sith that really at play.
Yeah. So we see the king talking to his generals. We see the king talking to Bar. And Bar is saying, no, I've foreseen it. You guys, the Mon Calamari, you guys play a central role in the downfall of the Empire. Then you see his general saying, hey, we need to do something right now. We have to attack. We have to figure this out. And then you have Akbar, who, ironically, is the only one saying, listen, we've held them off. They've lost a lot of people. Now's the time where you need to negotiate.
Right.
But the king has been convinced that, nope, we're going to defeat the Empire. We are going to defeat the entire Empire, who has the entire galaxy behind them. This one planet is going to defeat them. So at this point, I really start feeling bad for the king. This is where I'm like, man, you were just being used and manipulated.
Right.
Because it's by both sides, by the Jedi and by the Empire. The Empire is using him as an example. And the Jedi is using him to start a revolution.
Right.
To prove how
the
evil...
only sane person in the room is General Akbar or pre-General Akbar.
Right. Admiral.
Sorry.
Don't take his ranks away.
Maybe I was adding to his ranks.
Yeah, I don't know what the ranks are. Is Admiral above General, or...
Is it a Navy? It's a Navy, or...
Yeah, see, that's the thing, too. Is it a branch thing? If you're in space, is it Navy or is it Air Force?
I don't know. Evidently, we have the Space Force now, so...
Oh, yeah.
Will they get Navy titles, or...
I don't know. Because, I mean, the Navy flies airplanes.
Right.
It's all confusing. So how much did you, at this point when you're reading it, how much did you trust or distrust the Jedi?
I don't know. I didn't feel... I think the previous two collections of comic arcs that I've read have already painted a picture that the Jedi aren't just these, do-gooder people.
Right.
There's a lot more going on. They're very manipulative. They want their own ends. and they're willing to do whatever it takes to get those.
Right.
So I didn't particularly feel trustful of this.
Yeah.
This Jedi. What is it? Not. What's his name?
Bar.
I wanted to say Bam. I'm like, that's not Bam.
Bam Margera. Yeah, it's the comics really blur the lines.
Yeah.
Whereas the movies are very cut and dry, like you had said
Right.
earlier, that the Jedi are good, the Sith are bad. And in the comics, you're like, well, that's how the Inquisitors were made, is that
Right.
Order 66 happened, and they're like, no. We'll help you out.
Right.
And so what would those people have turned into? Or, we have this other Jedi, Bar, who is like, well, I'm just going to manipulate all kinds of situations until it turns out to what I want.
Exactly.
So, yeah, they do a very good job of blurring the lines. And I made this point reading the other comics, is that, are the Jedi truly the evil ones throughout this whole thing?
Yeah.
Are they the true bad?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question because, again, it's like your way of seeing the world, especially if you're a group of people. Okay. Taking the United States, for instance, like we're very bent on giving people democracy.
Right.
It's one of the main justifications for a lot of the things we do in the world. And I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with democracy, but trying to make other people who don't hold the same worldview,
you're gonna like it.
Yeah, you're gonna do it. And it's gonna work out for you. It's like, well, they don't have the whole history and development of how you got that process.
Right. The only reason we have the democracy we have is because we went through the struggles that we did.
Exactly, and it was costly.
Right.
And that's it. It's costly for other people and other cultures.
Yeah.
But I think we have bad expectations because we want a speedy process.
Right. We want you to have our democracy.
Right. Immediately.
And the democracy that we have right now is not the democracy that we had after the Revolutionary War, or with Lincoln, or even with Roosevelt. It's not the same.
Well, there's always development,
right?
And the country's always changing. Economics is changing. The global scene's changing. Anyway, all that to say, like, it seems like here in the comic, the Jedi are much more manipulative in their means of doing it, as opposed to now that the Sith are out in the open, so to speak, they're willing to use more force in order to get their means.
And so this is really going to get people upset. This is very politically charged. Okay, so in only one way, I want to be very clear about this, in only one way, the Empire reminds me very much of Bernie Sanders.
Okay.
In that, here's what we want to do. We're going to be very honest about what we're going to do.
Right.
And it's going to be a very restrictive way of doing things. Right? Not in the violence, not in the craziness that happens.
Nazi banners.
Right. None of that. But, the Empire says, I will have absolute control.
Right.
I will control taxes. I will control everything. And if you guys just do what I ask,
right, you'll get
then it's all going to be good. It's all going to work out. And, that whenever I say that's how Bernie reminds me, because a lot of other candidates come out and they hint at socialism, right? They hint at, well, we need these government programs, but that was easily one of the downfalls of Hillary Clinton's campaign, is that she lost a lot of support when she said, I am pro-capitalism. Right? And then here's Bernie saying, no, capitalism's bad. I'm openly admitting that I disagree with capitalism.
Right.
Whereas the Empire would be like, I openly disagree with X, Y, and Z.
How the Mon call.
Right. They're very honest and open and forward about, no, we have control.
Right.
And we're gonna keep control.
Right.
And
I think that's since we're all on the politically charged topic, I think that's the thing I do appreciate about Bernie Sanders is he sticks to his message and he's clear about it and he's honest about it, and you definitely see that reflected here in the comics where,
there's no flip-flop.
Yeah. You know what you're getting.
Like him or hate him.
Yeah, exactly. You know what you're getting, and it's the same with Vader. When Vader shows up, I mean, Tarkin knows it, right? When Vader shows up, Tarkin's like, oh, well, here's a whole different kind of negotiation.
Right. And there's something to be said for that. I mean, some people say that's why Trump won was because he came out and he was brutally honest, and there was no filter between brain and mouth.
Right.
Some people hate it. Some people are like, this is refreshing because this is the thought that popped into his head 2 seconds before he said it, which means that there wasn't enough time for him to think, how am I going to spin this to make people like it? He just said it, right? For better or worse.
Better or worse, yeah.
That's what happened.
Yeah.
And it's the same. We get a character in society like that every once in a while.
Yeah.
But there are so many politicians where, like, you're on TV, you seem fake.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what's refreshing about both Bernie and Trump to some degree is they shoot from the hip and they tell it how it is, and then they just stick
right.
to it.
And then when everybody's like, "Oh, can you believe what they said? Why would you say something silly like that?" They're like, "Well, I didn't think it was silly." Right? Some people, they'd be like, "Oh, well, what I actually meant was," and they would backtrack, and they would try to, but they're just like,
no.
Yeah.
And I think it's refreshing, whether or not you like it or not. It's refreshing that people are willing to do that.
Yeah.
Especially given the fact that there seems to be so many people who want positions of leadership or power, who backtrack all the time or try and respin the story, or if candidate A says something and they're not exactly on the same page, but everyone's like, oh, good job, candidate A, then they're like, oh, I got to go over to this side of that, and you're like, okay, well, can we just all sit down and be like, we're not all going to agree on everything, and that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Back to Star Wars.
So we get to this point where the Mon Calamari kind of released their ultimate defense. It's not really the ultimate weapon because they attack themselves.
Right.
But they have these giant whales that come and start like this tsunami, and it's I love the progression of it. In a couple of times in this series, I don't know if they got a different person to like set up the panels or the flow, or if it just worked out this way, but it's very cinematic in how it's just like a smooth, you see the whales up, the whales down, giant wave, people are worried, Vader's trying to hold it back.
Right.
It's too much because you can't hold back a planet full of water.
Even
and then,
if you are Darth Vader.
Right, and then everything's just sunk. So it was a very like boom, 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 boom. It happened so fast, but everything that's going on, you just want to kind of sit and enjoy it. And
yeah, it's really well illustrated.
And just the flow of the panels too. There's something to be said, especially writing my own comic. There's something to be said with how you set up the panels, because there's a story that came out, The Watchmen, and throughout the entire thing, it's a nine panel thing. Boom, 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 boom.
Every page.
Just about every single page. But it worked.
Right.
Because you're kind of reading that book almost like you would read a newspaper.
Okay.
Where it's information, and it's just building up to a point. Whereas if The Watchmen used something like this, it would have never worked, because that's not how the story flowed.
Okay, so in comic design, are there certain rules of thumb? For instance, like I'm looking at this page here, and this has what? Is this considered a panel, the whole back side of it?
So
there's two small squares, and then there's the whole rest of the page.
With this one, you read it like this. The whole image that you're looking at.
All right.
So you read it just like a book. top, left, and then you move right and down.
Yeah.
So if it's a connected image, that means you read this right here. We may have a problem here. Shield, boom.
Right.
And then you come down here and you work your way across. So what were you?
Well, just rules of thumb, like how many panels do you put on a page, or because like when you're decorating, this is what I've been told. I don't really do a lot of decorating, but people are always like, "Oh, you do odd numbers. You don't ever do even numbered pairs when you do things." So I didn't know if there were certain.
I mean,
planning.
I don't know about that. I do know that whenever with issue 2 of Magnus, we started writing actual script.
Okay.
Because with issue 1, it was I'd send him a text, he'd send me a text. We'd kind of work it out that way, and then I'd send him a text. But then we'd get excited, and I'd be like, "Oh, in 3 pages, we need to do this, 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 and this."
Right.
But then we'd get lost. So we'd have to go back and try to find it, and things got lost. And so this time we were like, "Okay, you need to sit down and write an actual script." And whenever I was doing that, I had some panels in mind. But what I've realized is that the panels need to flow with the art, not with the script.
Right.
And so about halfway through issue 2, I was like, I'm not going to do panels anymore. You figure out the panels. Let me know. If I have something crazy that I want you to do, then I'll say this is what I was thinking. Or if you send me a picture, I'll tell you kind of how I think it should be adjusted. But yeah, it just needs to flow. It can't be too choppy.
Yeah.
Like with this, you have a big, beautiful panel of a giant tidal wave that's taking in TIE fighters and knocking everything down. So if you were to have like these tiny little panels but have them all over, it would just ruin this because you're so focused on these things that you don't.
Yeah. Well, and it's obvious the way this particular image or 2 pages is set up. This is the main. This is what you want to see,
right?
Or you want the audience to see, and this is kind of filling in what's going on here,
right? And in some situations, what happens is they get so crazy with the panel design that it distracts from everything. So you have to be very strategic in like when you want to do a crazy panel.
Right.
There was a panel in Thor that they did where he was fighting his dad and he smashes him in the face with a hammer, and then inside the hammer, smashing into Odin's face, was like panels that you could read. And so it flowed well and it conveyed what you were trying to say, but some people try to get just insane with the flow of the panels that you're like, I don't know where I'm supposed to read.
Right.
And you just get lost.
So it's not intuitive.
Right. Yeah, and then, like here with Tarkin, they're looking at the hologram. Right. They just saw what happened.
So that seems more of like a classic setup.
Yeah, so you typically go with more classic when it's going to be dialogue.
Right.
If they're just standing around talking, you're not trying to convey any action. Right. It's going to be just a standard panel. You don't necessarily want to repeat the same panel over again, but some people do that. So they'll have this panel, and they couldn't fit all their dialogue in it, so then they'll just have this exact same picture down here with new dialogue. Yeah, so they get, and if you're drawing this many panels, I could see how you'd get tired of doing it, so you just copy and paste. But yeah, so we see Vader kind of sinking to the bottom of this ocean. He's not responding to any of his comms. We know he's not dead, but there is something that I enjoy about watching Vader being put to the test. Right. Something about him struggling. I don't want him to just be able to go in and kick ass all the time. I want him to be able to struggle. I want to see that he has to figure out a way to get out of whatever it is he's doing.
And of course, he's a brilliant person. You see that when he's Anakin. He's always manipulating and fixing things, and so he can problem solve. So it's nice to see that come out as opposed to just pull your lightsaber out and force choke or move people around type of thing.
Yeah, and that's the question I have too, is if he's in water, could he use the Force to propel him through the water like Aquaman?
That's a good question.
Because the water is a physical object.
Right.
And I could see how, like, Jedi can't fly. because the air is not a physical object that you can just do. They can jump really high because they're pushing off, and they can jump very far because they're pushing off of a physical object.
Could he pulse, like use the force as a pulse, so he's like pushing off water to some degree?
What I'm saying is he could just push against the water and then just
continuously.
Yeah.
Like Aquaman, yeah.
Right. Or could he pull himself to another object?
That's okay. See, that's an interesting way to think about it. It's almost not a vacuum, but like a magnet.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Well, there's a book that I read a while ago. It's called The Ables.
Okay.
And it's about special needs kids who have superpowers. And there's a lot of people that have superpowers, but this was specifically, it was like a blind kid in a wheelchair, kid with Down syndrome, stuff like that. One of the kids has telekinesis. And at the end of the book, they're like, wait, you can move things with your mind, right? He goes, yeah. And he goes, why don't you just move yourself with your mind and then you can fly? He goes, I never thought about that. So like, I'm just saying, can I lift myself with the force?
Right.
Or is that like having a sailboat with a fan on it?
Right. Maybe it is. You can't apply it to yourself because you're the user. I don't know.
Maybe. I don't know.
The metachlorians disrupt the...
Yeah, they won't react to themselves. So, again, like I said, the scene where Vader's underwater and he uses his lightsaber as like a glow stick so that he can actually see.
It's pretty cool.
Again, it's a very cinematic kind of flow to it where he's swimming through, just going... It looks like he creates some sort of air pocket.
That's what I couldn't figure that out.
Because
like, what's he doing?
Because it's like pressure, unstable. It's gonna crush your suit. You're running out of oxygen. You need to do something, and then all of a sudden this thing opens up,
the water
and it says external pressure returned.
Right. Well, that kind of answers our force.
The problem is the ocean is essentially a vacuum.
Okay.
Right? I can't just be in the ocean and be like, there's air.
Right.
Right? So how...
Where'd all the air come from?
Is he creating an air pocket? Is he dissecting the molecules of... I mean, what's going on?
He's splitting hydrogen and oxygen and then pulling in the oxygen and creating an oxygen bowl.
Right.
Yeah, see, we figured it out.
Okay. But also, here's the thing that's the problem with that is... This is a watertight suit. So the oxygen that he has are all in the suit. He's not pulling oxygen from external sources. Because if this is only pulling... If water's not rushing in, that means it's an airtight seal. Which means he's not...
What's the sensor saying? It's the pressure, right?
Well, it says he's running out of oxygen. And it says that the pressure... Oxygen reserves at 30%, and then external pressure has exceeded.
So you're saying that this is implying that he has his internal oxygen source.
Right.
Well, maybe he has both, where it filters air from the outside.
And then if he's in space or underwater, it closes off. Could be. But that still doesn't explain where he gets all this oxygen for the bubble.
He farted? I don't know.
Maybe. It could be that he pulled his 30% oxygen out. And
that's why he's out of air. There
you go. Solved it. All right.
It's a cool visual effect, if nothing else.
It is.
The science doesn't hold up.
Yeah. This whole sequence with the squid, though, where it attacks him, drops his lightsaber, but then he uses the Force to say, nope, you need to go pick up my lightsaber, and then I'm going to swim with you out of all of this.
Does this whole, like, doesn't he hold his hand out and it, like, the eyeglass is over? Or
it turns green.
It kind of reminded me of, I think it was Halo 2, where the Master Chief gets dropped in the water or something, and he meets the hive mind, and they're, like, talking, communicating. Anyway, it reminded me of that scene. There was nothing else to it.
Are you really into Halo?
I really enjoyed Halo when playing the games. I really liked the books. Not the most... They've, like, gone off way
Yeah.
every which way you could think of. But there's one of the authors was Eric Nyland. He did some of the original books. I really enjoyed those.
So my friend Jacob, who does the other Star Wars with me, he makes Halo machinimas. You know what those are? So there's a thing in Halo where you could have a map, and there was a camera, and you could record.
Right.
So what people did was they would make scripts, they would have everything set up, and they would go through and they'd make movies based on these.
Wait, is this like the red versus blue?
Yeah, that's like the most famous.
Right.
But he has one. It's Chronicler 177. If you want to check him out, he has like this whole universe built. We finished Star Wars, so we're done with that. So we're actually going to do a podcast over his show Spartan Legacy.
Okay.
So yeah, I knew nothing about Halo until I met him and he started introducing me to stuff. I never played any of the games.
What I like about Halo, I'm kind of, I guess somebody told me recently that I'm a hard sci-fi, which is like, I like sci-fi that's more realistic, and that's true. I tend to gravitate towards science fiction it's more realistic or based on where we have technology currently and where we think it's going.
Right.
I really enjoy that.
Yeah, from what I've seen, it's a very interesting concept, especially once you get into like what the Halos actually are.
Right.
And I really like the idea that the Spartans were mostly just created to hold down their own people. Right. And then it just so happens that they were attacked.
Right, yeah. I know. It's like one of those things where you're like, oh, this is a really like crazy, oppressive, you know. I mean, it's the Empire, really, right? Yeah. And then an external threat happens, and now they're being put to better use. I don't know. Yeah. It seems better, right? Survival of the species versus killing yourselves.
Right. So
anyway, yeah.
Back to this. We see Vader has used the squid to get back up to where it needs to be, and in Vader fashion, he just blows its head up. I don't know why he didn't just say, "All right, now go." Right. Yeah. He just blows its head up for whatever reason. Which I mean, I guess it wouldn't be Vader if he didn't.
And of course, now we have the Aqua Stormtroopers.
Yeah.
I'm like, where were those the whole rest of the... We were talking about the AT-ATs and... What is it? ST? Is it?
I don't know. I just call them Imperial Walkers.
Walkers, yeah.
So what struck me is this. It was a funny scene that he mind-controlled this thing all the way up. Right. But it's almost like... It's almost a very touching scene back here where he holds his hand out, the eyeglass is over, it hands him back his lightsaber, and then he just like rides it. All he's doing is like holding on to it. Right. And he rides it up. And then he's like, okay, that's enough Jedi. Boom. Now back to Sith. Right? It's like he lets a little bit of Jedi shine through and he's like, wait, what am I doing? And then he explodes its head.
Right. Yeah.
Because he can't let any Jedi in. So I mean it's just little bits of Anakin that shine through like this that really make you wish that, okay, come on. Even though we know how it ends. Right. That's the thing too. That's the stupid thing is that we know how this ends. We know that Vader doesn't change until the very end, and then he dies. Yeah. But we still hold out hope, and I love that we can see him doing all of this. But Vader gets back on the ship. They find him, and then he starts to say, you guys should have just left and followed the mission. Right. Why did you come save me? And they just keep saying, well, we were coming to find you. We needed to find you. And he goes, you were given a mission. Why would you come to find me? You're all fools.
Right. He goes, that's what he would have done. He would have left them all behind.
I never need rescue.
I forgot about that line.
Which he obviously didn't. He figured it out himself. But again, all they're trying to do is be a good team. Yeah. So in the other comic, they're attacking a planet much like this, except it's a lava planet, and they're disrupting government. Same general story. Right. But there's a queen involved, and the queen has joined Vader and is helping Vader and just wants to end everything so that she can get to, a peaceful resolution.
Right.
So she's on Vader's side. And there's a scene where a guy comes in and he lands a ship and he goes, "You guys have to get on the ship. We have to escape." Right? That's all he's trying to do is help out. Being a nice guy, he sees his queen in trouble, sees the guy that's with them that's trying to quell this rebellion. Get on the ship. We need to escape. Instead of Vader saying, "No, we're not going to escape," he throws the guy off a cliff and he says, "No one's escaping anything," and he hops on the ship, and then they go into the action. So it was a very Vader moment where he was just like, we could just react to this like a normal human being, or I can throw you off a cliff just for suggesting escape. But yeah, so he kind of has that reaction like, I don't need any help. Why do you want to help me? And it's almost like a defense mechanism where nobody's going to rescue me. I can rescue myself. And I'm not sure where that comes from.
You think, to me it's almost the internal dilemma, where he's still wrestling through things and needing help is a sign of weakness, so can't be seen as needing it.
It could be that too, because we see later on that even the Inquisitors are extremely competitive.
Right.
But anyway, that comes later. We see the king floating around, and a ship finds him. So you have this ocean planet, and they had giant earth-shattering waves that just destroyed everything on the surface. What are the odds of finding the king floating around in the ocean?
It makes a good story, so.
Okay. So then we see like their little, we see the Mon Calamari's little ships.
Tactics.
Yeah, which are pretty awesome.
Yeah.
They're like the fish that can jump up and fly a little bit, which makes sense because they're very streamlined, very, very good design, almost like jet skis. So I don't really mind that. What we see later, though, is that they come up and they fire these missiles, but the missile cases look like clams.
Oh, yeah, I
So,
didn't really pay attention to that.
I don't.
You're right.
It bugs me a little bit. They're like, oh, we have to throw this in. Like everything has to be an ocean
Right,
theme.
it has to look ocean.
Like their resource is kelponium or something like that. I'm like, you could come up with
But
anything.
the missiles don't look like
No.
seaweed or
No, they
spiral
look like
shells.
missiles. So
That's funny. I didn't even really pay attention to that.
yeah, it bugged me just a little bit, but it's an awesome scene because they dive in and they dive underneath the defenses.
It's this floating platform, essentially.
Right, and then they come up under it and just fire all these missiles. The king refuses to reopen negotiations. So for some reason, he thinks he can take on the Empire.
Right.
And I'm guessing this all comes from that Jedi.
Right.
The Jedi's put it in his mind that you guys are the ones. I've foreseen it. But it's like he ignores reality for this vision.
I guess that's kind of where, earlier I had said, like, the noble warrior king kind of starts to come out. Like, and to me, it's like the stupid side of it, right?
Yeah.
Like, he's so willing to be the noble warrior that he ignores the reality of the situation.
Yeah, because he's one planet against an entire galaxy. Right? There are way more planets that are for the Empire than against.
And they have a lot more resources.
Right. And also, he hasn't been in contact with any of these because he thinks he's going to be the savior of the galaxy.
Right.
And he even brings that up. He says, I will save the galaxy. And Akbar's like, what? What are you talking about? He goes, you're not going to save anything.
Right.
We are a planet, and they have everything they could ever want. So the Jedi has him believing this stuff. And then we see later on that one of his Padawans or whatever, he said, do you really think we can win? And he's just silent, and he goes, either way. That's all he says. He goes, either way.
Either way.
Yeah, it's...
He's almost... the Jedi is almost at a, like, he doesn't really care what happens. Like, he's at a point of desperation, right?
Yeah.
And he's willing to...
Well, and this isn't even the point of desperation because he thinks he's still hidden.
Right.
He doesn't reach desperation until he finds out that the king ratted him out. He set this all in motion. His point wasn't for the Mon Calamari to win. It was to set an example for every other planet watching that might disagree to say, hey, we were brave enough to fight against the Empire. You should be brave enough too. What he doesn't take into account is the absolute destruction and how that's going to work into their part.
Yeah, I didn't really buy I didn't buy the logic of well, we fought against the rebellion, and of course, I felt like they tried to really force the freedom angle.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. That's just
well, and again, that plays more into what we'll see later. Excuse me. We'll see later is that he's almost Jedi mind tricked himself. Right, into these delusions of grandeur.
Yeah, exactly.
Which, I have questions about that I want to get to. I don't want to jump the gun. But it's also funny, going back to the destruction of the platform, how this society has advanced so much that everything is energy blast, right? You shot an energy bolt, so we defend against energy bolts, but nobody defended against a metal missile. Right? Nobody went low-tech and said, well, we have to defend against this. So what do the Mon Calamari do? It's like, hey, we've got all these missiles. Let's just shoot them at the people.
Right.
So it makes you wonder if, bullets would hurt them more than, an energy bolt.
Right.
Because they've prepared for energy bolts. They haven't prepared for bullets.
Right.
And it's so funny how we kind of do that to ourselves. As society goes more and more advanced. Right?
Yeah.
We have Kevlar suits that don't weigh anything, and that can stop a 50 caliber bullet. But I can just go up and stab you, and it doesn't have anything to do with. It doesn't stop anything.
Yeah.
Right. You can. Yeah. You low tech your way to victory.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, and that's what it was with the Indians whenever the Europeans came over. The Native Americans, they had bows and arrows, while the Europeans had flintlock rifles. Well, while you load your flintlock, I could fire 10 arrows and decimate you.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for disease, the Europeans would have been fought off. There's no way that they could have beaten the Native Americans with bows and arrows. And it's just crazy that history plays out like that.
Yeah, it is funny how I think it helps. It should help us check the story we tell ourselves that of the progress of technology and how great it is, and it'll solve everything for us. When it's like, oh yeah, by the way, there's some unplug everything, and then
everybody freaks out. Yeah. Okay, so issue number 4. Let me see. We've got 3 issues left. When did you need to leave? It's 3:15 right now.
Probably another 30 minutes.
Okay, so we can at least get through issue 4.
All right.
So we see Bar, and he's freaking out because everybody's coming to get him, and then he tells the droid to make him this disc, and then with all of his work on there. But then he goes self-destruct, destroy everything once we leave. The treatment of droids has always been an issue for me in the Star Wars universe, and I brought this up in other podcasts that I've done. They're very much a second-class group of, I don't want to say people, but individuals. Especially for the amount of AI they have. Right? C-3PO has his own personality. R2-D2 has his own personality. They have their own wants, their own needs. They have friends.
Well, I thought they did a fantastic... That was one of my favorite parts about Rogue One. Was the Imperial
K2SO.
Droid. I can't remember his name.
Yeah.
The Imperial droid there, how they kept... at one point in the movie, they were like, have you had your checkup for yada yada yet? And he's like, what? I just love that whole dynamic they put in there with the droids and humans, and how he's more human in some ways than the other characters in the movie.
Right.
And he's quite the comic relief. And
but with the So in the comics and the movies, they're given so much personality that we're made to want to connect with them. Right? We connect with K2SO, we connect with C3PO, R2D2, BT, we all of them. And so we have this connection with them, but then he's like, I just want you to blow yourself up. Right? And so
you're expendable.
Yeah, is that something that they do on purpose? Is like make us connect with them and then purposely have people treat them like they're nothing but tools? Or
I mean, it serves as a really good conduit to make you think about some of that in your own context without it being super personal.
Because if Luke Skywalker ever told R2D2 to self-destruct, we'd be like, well, Skywalker's lost it and now he's evil. But they're still just robots. Like I can wipe the mind of R2D2 and start over. So does that make them less individual, or?
Well, and then I immediately think of, well, can't you just copy their schematics and code and then re-upload them to someone else? Or
maybe.
Some other droid?
Does that make them still them though?
I don't know.
So did you ever see a movie called Transcendence?
No. Is that with Johnny Depp?
Yeah.
Though? I haven't seen it. I wanted to watch it.
Yeah, so the idea was that he was dying and they wanted to upload his brain to a computer. And so they did that. A bunch of stuff happens. But there's always that question of, are you an AI simulating his brain patterns? Or are you actually him?
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's that same thing of, are you just inputting patterns of behavior into another droid, or is this the actual droid? But you can't really tell because they both have the same memories because you've uploaded it in there.
I suppose it depends on the person. Like, if you want to believe that it's the same person and they're doing everything that you know that person or droid to have done before, then you're willing to go along with it, even if it's fake to some degree.
Right. So Bar tells all of his Padawans, hey, we're leaving. And this is where, like, wait, we're Jedi, we're supposed to help. And he goes, no. We've done what we came here to do. We've upset everything. Somebody's fighting against the Empire. Now we need to move on to the next planet and do that. And nobody's ever really given, like, enough time to argue. They're just like, okay,
all right,
let's do it. Yeah.
Willingly throw ourselves off the cliff.
So how have the Jedi fallen so far from, like, the movies?
They're the ones who are supposed to be imposing order and safety. But now they're the ones fomenting death and destruction to a large degree. Yeah, I guess, yeah. I mean, again, we were just talking about desperation. Like, if you know most other Jedi have been executed and, killed, like, you're going to do whatever it takes to try and get revenge or to take care of the threat so that you can survive and so that anything you have left can survive.
So it's kind of, it's just survival's taken over at this point. So he's doing whatever he can to get rid of the threat so that they can start thriving again. So kind of one by one, his Padawans are dying. And we start having his flashbacks.
Yeah, that was really interesting. It was unexpected.
So what did you think about the flashbacks before I get into it?
It was totally unexpected to me. It was, I don't know, I had mixed feelings. One degree, I'm like, why are they telling me this? Because it seemed like there was no character development of these people. They seemed expendable, especially the way that I think they're
expended.
Yeah, they're like getting killed, and then they have a flashback about how they met Bar. And I thought it was interesting though because he's recruiting the flashbacks show you he's recruiting people who are in these desperate situations as well, or maybe vulnerable situations.
Right.
Is a better way of saying it. So it almost makes you feel like he's preying on weak people.
Well, and if you notice this bottom panel,
What is he saying?
and he's doing the.
You know what? I didn't even really pay attention that that's what he was doing.
That's the Jedi mind trick. Follow me.
That's funny. I didn't really pay attention to that.
So he's Jedi mind tricking this guy into following him. Which I have more that I want to kind of unpack here on the next page. But, so he's Jedi mind tricking this guy who just sacrificed himself to let him keep going.
Right.
So, is it okay for good to fight evil with evil? Because I think it's pretty fair to say you just talk this kid into joining you, and essentially, like, eventually sacrificing his life, being expendable.
Right.
That's pretty evil.
Right.
There's no other way of looking at that. So, is it okay to fight for good to fight evil with evil?
Yeah. I mean, it makes me think of why and how. It makes me think of the stories we tell ourselves as a society about why it's okay for us to justify going to war, people giving up their lives, and I mean, I think we all, people in society agree that that's okay, that it's a good thing to do.
To go to war.
The way we frame it is, it's good to fight for freedom or to fight for the country. So once we've all agreed that that's an acceptable, good, positive thing to do, then we're willing to have the cost that goes to accept the cost that goes with that. So I guess what I'm trying to say is we're redefining what's acceptable or what's not acceptable in that sense.
Right.
But that's not what Barr's doing necessarily. He's more taking advantage of someone who's in a vulnerable position, and then he's, mind tricking. To me, it almost feels like propaganda to some degree, right? You're taking propaganda to the next level. Truth seruming.
Yeah. So, in my mind, and I've had many conversations with my dad about this. We grew up in a pretty religious family.
Sure.
I still hold a lot of those beliefs. And one thing I've always struggled with is, well, how do you justify war biblically?
Right.
And I mean, there's biblical principle saying that war is justified. It's not considered murder because you're fighting for your country, right? It's a different thing. And there are arguments that can be made on both sides. But let's say that that's okay.
Right.
So that's not seen as evil. If you're going to fight for your country, which people were called upon to do all the time, that's one thing. But then if we're about to go to war and I sneak into your house and steal your child and brainwash them to grow up as a warrior,
definitely
that's completely different.
Thing. Yeah.
Right. Now, did you notice anything about the flashback panels other than the Jedi mind trick? Because he's doing it again in this one.
Well, it's funny to me that it's definitely a different color. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's green, right? So it's like this sickly feeling almost that I don't know.
Right.
I don't know if that's supposed to remind you what it is.
So there's 5 horizontal panels. 3, I call them yellow, but yeah, it's definitely like a yellow-green. And those are essentially bad things happening. Right? In each one. The guy's daughter or sister or whatever is being taken away. Yeah. And then he meets Bar, and it's a different color. This guy, he's being kicked out of his home, and then he meets Bar. And so you get 3 yellow panels, which are bad things happening. 2, I called them brown, sepia, whatever. And this is the Jedi mind trick that's going on.
Right.
Now, if you notice the location of these last two panels,
Okay.
it appears to be in some sort of a bar.
Right. Oh, it's the same bar too. I didn't pay attention to that.
And then
you're a much more careful reader than me, Knuckles.
in this other one, the third one,
Yeah.
same bar.
Yep.
Same symbol, same everything.
Yep.
So here's my question. Did all of these bad things actually happen to these people? Or did he go in and Jedi mind trick drunks in a bar to think that bad things had happened so that they would join
Empire?
So that they would join his fight?
Oh, that's a I don't know. I hadn't I hadn't seen that. So, what is this symbol that's in the
That's
bottom
the
here?
rebellion.
So they're in some sort of rebellion bar already.
Mm-hmm.
Rebellion bar club.
It's a bar that has the rebel symbol up.
Okay.
Now, keep in mind, at this point, that could just be a symbol.
Right.
Remember, there is no rebellion.
Right.
So that can't be a rebellion symbol. Maybe this is the birth of the rebellion, and they pull this symbol.
Off the war bar.
Maybe it's just this.
Of a bar.
Maybe it's just the symbol of a bar, and it's adopted as the rebel symbol.
Oh man, I don't know.
Because, like I said, if
that is
what's happening in the present is only a year after it happened.
Okay.
So 12 months
Right.
after the Republic fell, the Empire's been in control
Right.
for a year. So this can't be that far along.
Yeah.
So there's
No,
no way
that's-
that there's already a rebellion symbol.
Right. So has Bar had other things going on behind the scenes to set up more of this rebellion thing then? I mean, that definitely seems to be implying that.
My theory is that Order 66 went out.
Right.
The Jedi Order fell. Bar went crazy.
And started rebellion.
And then, I mean, we know that Jedi sometimes have visions.
Right.
And I think he may have had a vision. And
Well,
in order to make this vision happen, he went to a bar and he just started telling people, because why else would you have a flashback that's two different colors?
Yeah.
Why not just make it all the same color? It's all the same flashback.
Is there anything else in the Star Wars universe that matches this type of color with Jedi manipulation?
Not that I've seen.
Okay.
But it makes more sense to me that if he's already Jedi mind tricking these people,
Right.
then because we get like right in the middle of the sentence,
Right.
is where we pick up. We'll bring down the Empire together over it. The Force has showed me the path. All you need to do is, and then he finishes, is follow you.
Right.
So that leads me to believe that he's been talking to him through all of this,
Right.
putting all of this in his head, and then coming here.
Yeah, that's good.
So I think, and these aren't even Force users.
Yeah.
I think he's convinced them that they're Force users. Because later on, we'll see something else happen where they jump, but she doesn't actually jump. He's holding on to her.
Oh. I didn't really pay attention. I guess I wasn't putting those things together. But, I mean, the more you're pointing out, I'm like, oh, yeah, that does seem pretty obvious.
Yeah, I could be looking into it way too much, but
I mean,
that's just what it seems to me.
Why else would they be doing the different colors and the... I mean, they're obviously keeps doing the
Yeah.
waving of the hand thing. And now that you're pointing that thing out about Bar, he's missing his other horn, if you will.
Yeah.
And so the whole idea that you're talking about of going crazy and
Well,
seeing visions.
I think he was missing that because there's a scene of him sparring with Anakin, and I think he was already missing it.
Okay.
So I don't think he lost that there.
Sure, but I guess what I was trying to say is it's implying that he's...
Oh, yeah, he's crazy. He's off.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's been through some trauma.
Right, exactly.
Something happened, unless he just bumped into a doorway or something like
Crunch.
that. Yeah.
Defective horn.
Yeah. So it's awesome. There's a scene where Radis has all of his merchant ships,
yeah.
which have, and typically if you're a spacefaring race, your merchant ships are going to have low weapons, high defense, right, and you're just going to want to try to ride whatever it is out. Because you don't have space for weapons because you have all the stuff and you have the shields. So what they've done is they've put all of their warships in between the merchant ships, covered them all in a dome of protection, and they're just blasting through everything with no end in sight. And then Tarkin talks to Vader and says, "Hey, I need you to do me a favor.
Right.
I need you to go find the king." And Vader's like, "Listen, I'm not yours to command.
Right. I don't do favors.
You don't get to tell me what to do." And Tarkin, to his credit, says, "That's why it wasn't an order. I'm asking you."
Right.
So Tarkin is the first person to show Vader any sort of professional respect, which I think is huge.
Right.
Because I think Vader's not expecting it either. He's like, "Wait, okay. Usually people just try to assert their dominance over me, and I have to force choke them."
Right.
But here, Tarkin's like, "No, I understand who you are. I understand what you are. I understand what your skill set is. I will be in your debt if you just do this thing for me." And so Vader's like, "Yeah, okay. You guys go ahead and do this, and I'll go do this other thing." So we see that Bar has 2 more Padawans. One of them gets cut down pretty easily. And they're trapped out on this.
Hence the reason you were saying, are they actually Force users?
Yeah.
To some degree, too.
Right. Now, this is the only one that calls into question
Your theory?
anything. Well, because if you look, this is all sepia tones. These are not green.
Right.
So this person, I think, actually was saved by Anakin. Whoever she is.
Right.
And I don't think he had a Jedi mind tricker.
Right.
So, because let's see,
the green, yellow.
Well, you can see it's like you said, it's a sickly green.
Right.
This is more of the sepia tones here. There's a very distinct difference.
Okay, let's go back to the squid back here. When it changes its eye, is it the next page over?
Oh yeah.
What color does the eye turn?
It turns a sickly green.
Okay, I think that's
Okay, so what does that say about
case.
what does that say about the writers that they're thinking this deep?
I don't know.
Because I didn't even catch that the first time around.
Definitely didn't catch that.
The first time I read this, I did not catch that. But this time around, I'm like, "Oh, okay." So
there's an actual memory that happened, right, where they're actually in the bar with
right.
And then there's the supposed memory. But in this instance, it seems like they're communicating that she actually got saved by
Well, they even changed the setup of the thing. Because it used, in all the other ones, it was 3 panels of bad, 2 panels of bar.
Right.
Here we have 4 panels of her getting saved.
Right.
So not bad things, but she got saved. And then she's like, "Yeah, I got saved, so I'll do whatever you need me to do." But yeah, so it also seems like Bar is using Jedi mind tricks to say that he's having these visions of the future. So it really calls into question, is he really having these visions? Right. If you were to just read this for the very first time, not having any knowledge of Star Wars, then you'd be like, okay, maybe he's not having visions.
Right.
Now, obviously, we know that Admiral Akbar plays a huge role in the fall of the Empire. But...
Well, okay, the way I read it was he's making all these claims, he's trying to manipulate things, but in the end, what happens isn't actually what he foresaw happening.
Right.
But it's like he gets lucky.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's how it struck me.
When we also find out once the Inquisitors show up, they're like, yeah, we know who you are.
Right.
You never even made Jedi.
Right, exactly.
You were a Padawan. But here, in front of all of these people, he's playing like a Jedi Master.
Exactly.
And so this whole time, he's been playing it up. He never even got all of his training. His master died. And so he never made it past Padawan. And yet here he is. You know, there was a documentary that we watched. It was fantastic. It was about a guy who pretended to be a yogi.
Okay.
And essentially started his own cult just to prove that he could and to prove how easy it was.
Right.
And that's exactly what he did here. He knew a little something about yoga.
Right.
And then he made up the rest.
Right.
And he had the look. And that's exactly what Barr did here. He was a Padawan who knew a little bit. He knew enough.
Right.
And he had some force powers. And then he just made up the rest of it.
It also implies that he knows something about the rest of the galaxy, right? Like, he knows that people are looking for a different alternative than the Empire. But they need a kick in the pants to get it going.
Yeah. I thought the coolest part of this whole thing, though, was whenever he was like, once a Jedi, always a Jedi.
Right.
You guys might say that you're not Jedi anymore, but you're not Sith.
Right.
You're Jedi. So then he Jedi mind tricked the stormtroopers into saying, execute Order 66.
Yeah, that was a pretty... I didn't really predict that coming. That was pretty good. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, it was a very smart move. So, like, as much as he BS's everybody, he's not stupid.
No.
And so he knows what's going on. I thought it was a very intelligent move.
Yeah. I like I said, I didn't see it coming, and I really enjoyed the turn of events.
All right, it is 3:37. Do you want to just continue this later, or did you want to plow through 5 and then we can save issue 6 since it's not really involved in the...
I can go for a little longer, so let's try it.
All right, issue 5 is only a one-pager. It's more of an action sequence anyway. Okay. So, would the Order 66 thing work if Vader were there? Would they have attacked Vader since he's Sith?
That's a good question. I mean, I kind of think he would have been able to
kill him sooner.
Yeah, either kill him sooner and before he gives the order, or maybe be able to use the Force to unmind trick them or mind trick them again. Right.
So we see another flashback. It's a sickly green.
Yeah.
So this kind of confirms what I was saying earlier, is that he's tricking these people into thinking that they're Jedi.
Right.
If we're going with the sickly green means that it's a lie.
Right.
So he's got this girl thinking that she's a Jedi, but then they purposely show right underneath that he grabs a hold of her and he tells her to jump. Do like I taught you and jump. But he holds on to her the whole time. So he's got all these people to convince that they're Jedi.
Yeah.
But, okay, so again, this is the caliber of comic book writing that I want to do, where I'm hiding things in here that you don't get until your third time reading it through.
Right.
Like, that's it. I never put it together.
Yeah,
never.
I mean, I knew the color. Obviously, the colors are different, so you notice it. But I wasn't putting together that is probably a fictitious memory.
Yeah, and it wasn't until this one.
That one, yeah.
Because this isn't sepia, this is green.
Because they're highlighting this.
Yeah.
In the panel that he's grabbing her.
Yeah, this is. We're talking about 3-dimensional chess with like Vader and Palpatine and Tarkin. This is 3-dimensional chess while you're making comic books.
It's great writing.
Yeah. So we see that Sixth Brother just pulled the whole "I only need to be faster than you" trick.
Right.
On
the outrun the bear.
Yeah. Yeah. So he cuts off. He cuts off her leg.
Yeah.
And just leaves her there. So again, this goes back to they used to be Jedi.
Yeah.
Like these people, although Anakin was a Jedi and he killed a bunch of kids.
Right.
So I guess saying you used to be Jedi doesn't really.
It doesn't really mean anything, right?
Has no. All right. So.
I think that implies to me you have to buy in, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just a guy with powers and you can.
Right. Well, and how often do we see it at school where, yes, I'm at school, but I don't care?
Exactly.
Right? These kids were taken from their home
right.
to never see their parents again and brought there just because they had superpowers.
Right. And then they're told, don't engage your emotions either.
Right. You know, all these sad feelings that you're having about your parents, right. Don't worry about that.
And any hope of happy feelings that you might have for love or friendship, don't worry about those either.
Right. So Vader breaks into Tarkin's, or not Tarkin, into the King's chamber.
Yeah.
And this is a really great / heartbreaking scene. Because Tarkin, or not Tarkin, I keep calling him Tarkin. The King is still holding on to, you know, we're going to beat you.
Right.
We're destined to beat you. We're destined to be the saviors of the galaxy.
Right.
And then Tarkin's like, Vader, don't kill him. Take him to the window. And then he just blows up all of these giant cities with the Star Destroyers. And even then, the King is like, this changes nothing. You're not going to do anything.
Right.
We're still going to beat you. We're going to come back from this. And then Bar shows up. Now, going back just a bit before Bar shows up, is this where Vader learned his tactic with Leia? Because he pulled Leia to the window and made her watch Alderaan get destroyed.
Yeah, that's a good connection.
So nice is this where Vader picked up his little tips
from Grandmaster Tarkin?
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely is a good parallel. It seems like that's. I mean, it's like you know, you've killed your foe and they're not quite dead yet, so you ram the dagger just a little bit further into emphasize the point.
Well, and this just goes to show that Tarkin's only trying to prove a point.
Right.
Tarkin, he still wants the king to be king. Because if you take him out as king, then you're completely destabilizing the planet. Who knows who's going to take over? Who knows what's going to happen? But if you can keep him there, it just makes it a lot smoother.
Yeah.
But then Bar comes in, and he's fighting Vader. And Vader's really not having any of it. He's kind of just waving him off.
Right.
Bar's kind of full of himself, right? Like, he thinks he's going to...
To me, he strikes me as a delusional figure, right?
Yeah, I think he's just crazy.
Yeah.
But even Vader's like, you know you can't win, but you're not going to give up because you're too proud.
Right.
And then Bar's like, well, why shouldn't I be proud? When all's said and done, I'm the one who brought the Empire down.
Right.
And Vader's just like, you haven't done anything.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
So through all this, he reveals that all of this was just a plan, that the Mon Cala weren't going to be the ones to destroy the Empire, at least not now. But he's not wrong.
Right, exactly. That's what I was trying to say earlier, too, yeah.
Because, like I said, Akbar played a huge role in it. And he even says, yeah, you're not going to win now. You're all going to die now.
Right.
But in 10 years, you guys are going to play a huge part.
Right.
And then in another 10 years, you guys are going to play another big part.
Right.
And so he didn't necessarily lie, but he definitely lied.
It's a great piece of writing or script or design here in the comic, because it makes you feel like, well, is Bar crazy or is he not crazy? I mean, I definitely lean towards the side that he's crazy and he got lucky, so to speak. But at the same time, he definitely seems like he's planning certain things, because it's like he's pointed in the right direction.
When we also know that Jedi do have visions. Right? Anakin had a vision of Padme dying.
Right.
And that's what happened. Now, he didn't see how she died.
Right.
Just like he saw that this happened, but he didn't see how it happened.
Right.
He just left that little detail out while he was trying to get the king on his side.
Right.
So the king really falls hard here, because Bar is like losing bad.
Yeah.
And Bar just brought his world down saying, I had you sacrifice billions of your own people just so that, this crazy fantasy of mine could come true. He also runs over to the computer and says, listen, we surrender. We're done. We're not going to fight anymore. And then Tarkin says, oh, that's great. We're going to keep firing until we can get some people down there to visit with you. And so even more of his people die. It's just a bad day for the king. And it's all at the hands of a Jedi.
Right.
Who are supposed to...
A self-proclaimed Jedi. Now.
Right. A Padawan. Right. And so again, is he crazy or is this just how he is?
Yeah. Like,
he really thought that he could save the galaxy.
Yeah. I mean, the whole missing horn thing to me, like, symbolizes the fact that he's just he's an unstable broken, unstable individual.
Yeah. This, so the Mon Calamari start taking those merchant ships that are full of people and just launching them into space.
Right.
In the hopes that a few of them make it out. But we see this 2-panel thing where the king says, but billions are dying. And Bar says, billions who will inspire trillions, as was my plan.
Right.
So for one, is that justifiable? Billions to save trillions?
Right. It's the classic kind of totalitarian, the ends justify the means type.
Right. But then we see Vader, again, he can't emote.
Right.
But he says, you are no Jedi. So we see Vader getting upset.
Right.
That he's perverting what the Jedi are.
Right.
And I can't figure out if this is just a little bit of Anakin peeking through and saying, you're a disgrace. Or if it's Vader being mad that he wasted his time coming down to kill a Jedi when all he found, when all he found was a crazy person.
Right. I mean, it shows that it's a great piece of writing because you are left with which one is it? It could be,
right.
It could be either one.
Yeah.
And I mean, it seems to me like that's the track record with Darth Vader /
one has a much larger implication than the other. Because one means that he still believes in the true way of the Jedi.
Right.
But he saw the corruption and the perversion that had happened before.
Yeah, and so in that instance, maybe it's Bar is recalling all of the things he hates about, the Jedi, in the sense that that's not really who the Jedi are supposed to be.
Right.
But in the same sense, it could be reminding him of himself. I don't know.
So we'll leave it with, was Bar wrong for what he did? Because, okay, so if he hadn't done this, then the rebels may not have made it later. They never say whether his vision was true or not. All we know is that he said he had a vision, and we know that these ships and the Mon Calamari, specifically Akbar, play a huge role in the rebellion overthrowing the Empire. So, did Bar do the right thing?
I mean, from the Star Wars cinematic universe, I suppose you could argue that he inspired the rebellion, and that was a positive outcome. But did it? Genocidally destroying a whole race of species justify rebellion in the end? I don't know. I don't think so, but.
Okay, I mean, it really goes. It really goes back to, let's look at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Right. I mean, if we hadn't dropped those bombs, they definitely would not have surrendered anytime soon.
Right.
So, is it okay to wipe out all of those people to save, more of your people? and possibly generations to come.
Yeah. I think those are like those are impossible decisions to make, but people have to make those decisions. Right. And the unfortunate part is that we find ourselves in a world where we have to use those means in order to seemingly stop the inevitable.
I think,
at least in the immediate.
Yeah. I think the hard part is, especially with like Hiroshima and Nagasaki, they targeted military bases that were being put up in the middle of civilian zones.
Right.
And the same thing with the comic is that the Jedi, well, not Jedi, the Padawan, Bar, whatever his name is.
Yeah.
Okay, so Bar sacrificed billions of civilians in order to do this. We killed civilians, and I think that's where the moral quandary comes in.
Right.
Because if this was all just a warlike race, and they were all Spartans,
right?
Everybody was fighting.
Yeah.
The women, children, everybody. Then you'd feel less sympathy.
Yeah.
Because they were warriors, right? They signed up for that. Whereas here, it's not. It's just people just living out their lives.
And maybe that's the divergence there with... I mean, it's pretty obvious that when people go to war, the countries support... Like, the people in the country have to support that effort.
Right.
To make it happen. And, I mean, that's one of the whole ideas in World War II behind, what do they call it? Strategic bombing. Is that the nice name for it?
Yeah.
Basically, you go level all the cities in Europe, in an effort to...
Do everything but salt the earth.
Yeah, exactly. In order to destabilize the rest of the country.
Yeah.
And the war faster, but, like, that's... It's a no-win situation. Like, you get a win in the end. You stop someone, but it comes at great cost.
It's winning the moral battle by 51%. Right? I mean, it's 51-49 because you still have to live with the fact that you wiped out all of those people.
Yeah.
Now, he was willing to accept that. Bar was.
Right.
Bar said, listen, I know what I did.
Well, it's funny, too, because the king seems to think that way, and then he starts to see it happen, and he's like, wait.
Well, and the king thought that he was... So, again, pride runs through all of this. Bar filled his head, and who knows, he may have Jedi mind-tricked the king.
I know that the more that we're talking about this whole... Seeing all these panels, I'm like, oh, it seems pretty... Well, but there's no color differences there, right?
Right, but it's not a flashback.
That's true, it's not a flashback. But it definitely seems like that's the pattern that they've set up.
He likes to Jedi mind trick people.
Yeah.
And he likes to get what he wants out of it.
Yeah.
So, I think that's what happened. I think he Jedi mind tricked the king into thinking he was going to be the savior of the galaxy.
Right.
He was going to be this big, celebrated figure.
Right.
And then what really happened was, no, just a couple of your people are going to survive, and they're going to be the ones who do it. Right. You're going to spend the rest of your life in prison.
Yep.
And maybe die there. So, all right. Well, we will save issue 6, which is a super fun but disconnected story.
Yeah. It was actually probably one of my favorite parts of this whole issue.
It was amazing. We'll cover this the next time we meet.
Sounds great.
We'll do a short video over this, and then we'll jump into the next one. But as of now, that's all we've got for today. You've got to get going. Thank you guys for joining us. Remember, you can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at The Comic Den. Please make sure you like, subscribe, and there's a little gray bell that if you don't hit it, then you're not going to get notifications. That's all I got, man. Yeah.